From a blind date came a sister who is a CEO. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 76, Verbal Warfare. Zheng Shiqing was stunned for a moment, and in her mind, she couldn't help but analyze what Lin Zhuangxuan said. Lin Zhuangxuan then said, I think he must not have told you that he opened this company with me, and he didn't tell you that he has a girlfriend, right? Otherwise, why would you come here? If you came here, you wouldn't be so surprised to see me. Zheng Shiqing felt that she was very smart, but under Lin Zhuangxuan's aura, she was still a little passive everywhere. The most important thing was that Lin Zhuangxuan directly hit the point. Shaking her head gently, Zheng Shiqing said, yes, he told me that he doesn't have a girlfriend yet, otherwise I wouldn't have come here. Ashley, this is really embarrassing and humiliating. Lin Zhuangxuan snorted and said, this bastard, he's eating from the bowl and wants to take over the pot. It's simply too much. Zheng Shiqing looked at Lin Zhuangxuan and said, this is indeed quite excessive. He is simply a scumbag. This is absolutely intolerable. Humph, President Qiao, can you still tolerate such a scumbag? Lin Zhuangxuan snorted and said, absolutely intolerable. I will never let it go this time. Zheng Shiqing also said angrily, I think there is no need to say anything to him at all. Just break up with him directly. With President Qiao's appearance and talent, what kind of man would be devoted to you? How can such a scumbag be worthy of you? Lin Zhuangxuan nodded repeatedly, slapped the table and said, yes, break up. Definitely break up. Zheng Shiqing also nodded repeatedly and said, Mr. Qiao is more straightforward. Such a scumbag should be treated like this. Lin Zhuangxuan suddenly sat down again. The anger on his face suddenly disappeared. Then he grinned and said, Zheng Shiqing, did I break up with him, and then you took over immediately? A trace of embarrassment flashed across Zheng Shiqing's face, and she snorted and said, I, Zheng Shiqing, am not the kind of person who picks up other people's unwanted things. Really? Lin Zhuangxuan raised the corners of his mouth, revealing a teasing smile, and said, if that's the case, you really don't need to say these things to me here. A man you don't want, just throw him away. Why bother saying all this nonsense because of him? Zheng Shiqing's eyebrows slowly curved into a crescent. Then she chuckled and said, it seems that President Qiao has never thought of getting rid of him. I haven't seen him or contacted him for 7 years. I was impulsive at the class reunion, just the kind of feelings I had when I was a teenager. After calming down, I felt that so many years had been missing between us. Whether we are really suitable for each other, I don't know what kind of person he is now, so I calmed down my impulse towards him. But seeing President Qiao's reaction, I know that Wei Feng is indeed an excellent man, so I don't want to give up easily, and I also want to fight for it. Lin Zhuangxuan's face darkened and said, Zheng Shiqing, you are a bit shameless. He already has a girlfriend, and you are interfering. It's immoral. Zheng Shiqing raised her eyebrows and said, don't worry, I won't cling to Wei Feng shamelessly, that will only cause him trouble. I will just wait silently. I will get along with him as an old classmate and old friend. If he can get along well with you and end up together, I will bless you. If he separates from you, I will definitely snatch him away without hesitation. Lin Zhuangxuan looked at Zheng Shiqing in astonishment and said, hey, are you serious? Why does it feel so fake? Zheng Shiqing's face showed a proud look, and she said, Mr. Qiao, I, Zheng Shiqing, am also a proud person. I won't do such a direct snatching thing. As you said, it's immoral, but you can't deprive me of normal interactions with him as a friend and a classmate. Heh, you are provoking me. You are afraid that I'm stingy, and you don't even have a chance. Do you think I can't see it? Lin Zhuangxuan leaned against the back of the sofa with a mocking look on his face. Zheng Shiqing snorted and said, yes, I'm provoking you. Are you afraid? Lin Zhuangxuan waved her hand and said, I'm not afraid, but I feel that why should I give you such a chance? Human nature cannot stand the test. For men, beautiful women are the most irresistible temptation. A smart woman does not think that a man will not have any thoughts about other women. This is simply unrealistic. so not letting him have such an opportunity is the best way to solve the problem. Zheng Shiqing was surprised and said, Mr. Qiao, a company boss who is so busy with all kinds of things, actually has such good experience in feelings. It really makes me look at him in a new light. Lin Zhuangxuan said confidently, career is career, and feelings are feelings. These need to be maintained. There is no one-sided effort in feelings. I'm very clear about this, so I really won't give you any chance. Zheng Shiqing smiled slightly and said, since Mr. Qiao is so confident and so careful, your confidence is not real. I told you that men can't stand the test of beautiful women, especially first love like yours. But I also want to remind you that the reason why first love is beautiful is that you can't get it, so you will always think about it and long for it. But once this relationship is broken, it really has no value in commemorating it. If I were you, I would always maintain this relationship and let him always have a longing for you. Zheng Shiqing chuckled and said, actually, I think your idea is not quite right, Mr. Qiao. In fact, in terms of feelings, first love is like a hidden disease in a person's body, or a pimple on a person's skin. If it is not cleared, it will get bigger and bigger, and it will make you extremely painful, but if you poke it open and get rid of the poison, then nothing will happen. Lin Zhuangxuan's eyes widened and said, you mean I have to let you have a love affair if I want you to have a love affair? Zheng Shiqing's smile deepened, and she said, of course not. I'm just reminding you that you really don't need to block it in various ways, and it's better to let it go than to block it. It's better to put everything on the table and let this kind of emotion take its course. This will be easier to solve. Lin Zhuangxuan snorted and said, your eloquence is really not simple. I didn't expect that you, an artist, would have such eloquence and such scheming. Zheng Shiqing smiled slightly and said, Mr. Qiao, this kind of personal attack is meaningless. When it comes to feelings, no identity is important. Chapter 77 Choice. Lin Zhuangxuan and Zheng Shiqing really felt like a match made in heaven. For a moment, neither of them had the upper hand, and both of them realized that neither could convince the other. Zheng Shiqing suggested again, I think we should let Wei Feng decide for himself. No matter what, we can't make the decision for him. Lin Zhuangxuan raised his chin proudly and said, Humph, you really got the upper hand, but if I don't let Wei Feng say this in person, you won't give up. He picked up his phone and sent a voice message, Dear, come to my office. In less than a minute, Su Weifeng came to the office, and Hao Zhaoqiang poked his head at the door, and then shrank back. This kind of drama might be interesting, but it might also cause trouble, so it's better to avoid it. When Su Weifeng came in, both of them looked at him quietly. Su Weifeng coughed lightly and said, Hey, the atmosphere between you two is not right. You should scold me for being a scumbag, and then kick me out directly. You don't feel guilty at all. Lin Zhuangxuan said unhappily. Su Weifeng came over and put his hand on Lin Zhuangxuan's shoulder, saying, a real man should admit his mistakes. There is no use in being afraid of guilt. Shiqing, I can only say that I was really excited and impulsive when I saw you that day, but afterwards, reason reminded me that I couldn't do this, so. Lin Zhuangxuan's mood suddenly became extremely bright. She raised her hand and held Su Weifeng's hand, and then looked at Zheng Shiqing with a victorious look. Zheng Shiqing was neither disappointed nor angry at this time. Instead, she smiled and said, this is the Su Weifeng I know. If you are still hesitant now, or choose me, I will be really disappointed. Su Weifeng also smiled and said, Shiqing, you are much more mature and generous than before. Zheng Shiqing stood up and said, I can't be not generous. I can't just cry here and make you feel sorry for me. What's the meaning of seeking feelings like that? Lin Zhuangxuan also stood up at this time, stretched out her hand to Zheng Shiqing, and said, your reaction really makes me admire you. I have to admit that, if Wei Feng chooses you, I will definitely not be as generous as you. Zheng Shiqing held Lin Zhuangxuan's hands together and said, this is very simple. Wei Feng and I are not really in love yet. If we really have been getting along, I wouldn't be so calm. But it's impossible to say that I don't feel any bitterness in my heart. I still envy you very much. Letting go of Lin Zhuangxuan's hand, Zheng Shiqing took a breath and said, cherish Wei Feng and don't give me a chance. Otherwise, if he gets to me, I really won't let him run away. Lin Zhuangxuan raised her chin and said, I will take care of my own things. Su Weifeng, I'm leaving now. At least I'm still your classmate. Can we chat when we have nothing to do in the future? Zheng Shiqing stretched out her hand to Su Weifeng. Su Weifeng shook hands with Zheng Shiqing and said apologetically, Shiqing, I'm really sorry, but I also sincerely thank you. Zheng Shiqing smiled sweetly at Su Weifeng again and turned to walk out of the office. Su Weifeng and Lin Zhuangxuan sent her to the door. Hao Qiang grinned and said, sister-in-law, I will come to play again in the future. Lin Zhuangxuan said with a smile, okay, come over if you have nothing to do. I won't keep you today. You should send Shiqing back safely. When you come next time, sister-in-law will treat you to dinner. Okay. Hao Qiang agreed happily and then secretly gave Su Weifeng a thumbs up. Watching Hao Qiang and Zheng Shiqing enter the elevator, Su Weifeng felt a sudden pain in his waist. He turned around and saw Lin Zhuangxuan's murderous eyes. Su Weifeng grinned at Lin Zhuangxuan and said, okay, the show is over. Lin Zhuangxuan grabbed Su Weifeng's arm and dragged him to the office. Looking at Su Weifeng's indifferent expression, he couldn't help but said angrily, acting? Do you really think I'm acting? Yes, I don't need to play my sister anymore at this time, but I'm just as angry. You actually cheated on my sister and hooked up with your first love. If I hadn't discovered this in time, would you really want to get along with her and have a two-timing relationship? Su Weifeng gently pulled Lin Zhuangxuan's hand away, sat on the sofa, and said, no, what I told you in person is the truth. If I really wanted to have a two-timing relationship, I would definitely prevent her from coming here. I would never be with her. It's better to keep this beauty in my memory. Lin Zhuangxuan snorted and sat directly next to Su Weifeng. She pinched Su Weifeng's thigh with her small hand again and said, you are just careless. You didn't expect Zheng Shiqing to come to the company so early and meet me. Su Weifeng grinned and pretended to be in pain and said, am I that careless? This is a big deal. How can I be so careless? Humph. Lin Zhuangxuan pinched him again and then let go. In fact, she also believed what Su Weifeng said, but she still felt unhappy when encountering such a thing. At least she felt unhappy for Qiao Yushan. I will definitely tell my sister about this and see how she deals with you. Su Weifeng smiled and said, it's up to you. Lin Zhuangxuan glared and said, oh my god, aren't you afraid that my sister will get angry? Oh, I will definitely scold her, but I've pulled back from the brink of disaster, so it can be forgiven. Su Weifeng certainly knew that Qiao Yushan would not care, but in front of Lin Zhuangxuan, if she showed it too obviously, Lin Zhuangxuan would probably doubt their relationship again. HMPH, I'll curse you to death. Lin Zhuangxuan glared at Su Weifeng fiercely. You're stricter than your sister. Su Weifeng shook his head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Lin Zhuangxuan's eyes flashed with a trace of panic, and then he puffed out his chest and said, my sister is too careless about feelings. I'm helping her to watch you. Otherwise, she would be devoted to you at home, and you don't know how many silk banners you would put up outside. PFFT, that's too much. In your heart, am I that kind of person? Su Weifeng rolled his eyes. This is called taking precautions before it happens. All uneasy factors must be nipped in the bud. My sister doesn't have time to take care of you, and I happen to be free, so I must fulfill my responsibility as a younger sister and keep an eye on you, a playboy. Chapter 78 Wu Changai's Confidence. Hao Qiang sent a message to Su Weifeng, telling him that Zheng Shiqing had left directly in the afternoon, feeling a little lonely. Su Weifeng hesitated for a moment and sent Zheng Shiqing only 3 words, I'm sorry. No matter how much explanation there was, it was meaningless. Zheng Shiqing did not reply, and it was unknown whether she was still on the plane or did not want to reply at all. Lin Zhuangxuan said that she would complain to Su Weifeng, but Lin Zhuangxuan did not really tell Qiao Yushan. Lin Zhuangxuan stood in front of Su Weifeng with his chest puffed out and said arrogantly, Comrade Su Weifeng, I helped you suppress this matter. This is also a chance for you to reform. If you make similar mistakes again in the future, I will never cover up for you again. Su Weifeng sat on the sofa, looked up at Lin Zhuangxuan, and said hurriedly, thank you, Zhuangxuan. for your generosity. I knew you were the most considerate. Huh, just one sentence? Then I'll treat you to a big dinner tonight. That's better. The reason why Su Weifeng and Lin Zhuangxuan are very relaxed together is that Lin Zhuangxuan has a character that can take it or leave it. Obviously, he was fierce just now, but after a while, the two of them could talk and laugh. In the evening, the two went out for a skewers and drank some beer, and all the unpleasant things were thrown aside. The next day, Su Weifeng and Qiao Yushan went directly to Xinlong Villa, which was the villa where the classmates had a reunion 2 days ago. This time, the place was reserved by Wu Changgao. The car stopped, but Qiao Yushan did not get out immediately. Instead, she turned to look at Su Weifeng and said, "I'm afraid that Wu Changgao will resort to some tricks. You beat him up last time, and this time he will most likely arrange someone to avenge you." Su Weifeng smiled and said, "I might be afraid of other things, but am I afraid of this? Have you forgotten how I saved Zhuangxuan that time?" Qiao Yushan was shocked, but still said, "But a good tiger cannot stand up to a pack of wolves. I'm afraid of him." "Don't worry, in my eyes, it's just a group of sheep. A good tiger cannot stand up to a pack of wolves, but if the opposite side is just a group of sheep, what threat can it pose to the tiger?" Qiao Yushan understood what Su Weifeng meant. In his eyes, the people Wu Changgao was looking for were at most a group of sheep, but Wu Changgao himself was a wolf, so how could the people he was looking for be sheep? "Let's go." Su Weifeng got out of the car. Qiao Yushan gritted her teeth and got out of the car as well. She had come here, so she had to deal with this matter. When they were almost at the cabin, Su Weifeng suddenly laughed. Qiao Yushan was getting closer and closer to the cabin, and was getting nervous. "What are you laughing at?" Su Weifeng pointed at the cabin and said, "What a coincidence. The cabin that Wu Changgao booked is actually the place where I went to attend the last class reunion." "Oh, there's nothing funny about this, right?" Qiao Yushan asked in confusion. Su Weifeng smiled slightly and said, "The same cabin is not funny, but meeting the same people may be very interesting. You will know when the time comes." When they arrived in front of the cabin, Qiao Yushan was still a little nervous. Su Weifeng directly took her left hand and squeezed it gently. Qiao Yushan took a deep breath, held Su Weifeng's hand back, looked at each other, and walked into the cabin. Wu Changgao was the only one in the cabin. At this time, he was sitting upright on a chair, holding a cup of tea in his hand, squinting at the two of them, with a confident smile on his face that showed he was in control of everything. "Mr. Qiao, have you thought about it?" Wu Changgao took a sip of tea and lit a cigarette, not taking Su Weifeng seriously at all. Su Weifeng directly pulled Qiao Yushan to sit opposite Wu Changgao and said, "What's there to think about with a piece of trash like you?" Qiao Yushan smiled bitterly in her heart. Even though she knew that this time, it would definitely not end well, Su Weifeng was just confronting him, leaving no room for him. And she couldn't get a word in. Everything on her side was led by Su Weifeng, and she even felt a little redundant. "Boy, do you think I'll be afraid of you after you hit me last time?" Wu Changgao stared at Su Weifeng with a gloomy face. Su Weifeng shook his head and said, "How can you be afraid of me? You definitely won't be afraid, I know this very well." Wu Changgao sneered and said, "You still have some self-awareness." No. Su Weifeng shook his finger and said, "I said you won't be afraid of me, that's because I didn't hurt you, or make you submit. So this time I must make sure you remember it." Wu Changgao slammed the table and shouted, "Fuck you, do you really think I, Wu Changgao, am a soft persimmon? Today I'm going to let you feel what it feels like to be beaten. No, I want to see how it feels to be beaten like this, before I can be submitted to him." Seeing that he was about to take action, Qiao Yushan was also very troubled. She looked at Su Weifeng, but forced herself not to speak. At this time, the methods she could use were really limited. Su Weifeng leaned back and said, "Why don't you call everyone out? I'm not interested in beating up a pig like you. Boy, you're smart. You knew I brought people. Maybe you brought people too? Why don't you call them out and let me see?" Qiao Yushan looked at Wu Changgao's confident look at this moment and was secretly shocked. This was a performance with absolute confidence, which meant that the people Wu Changgao brought were definitely very powerful. This kind of power was not just a matter of being able to fight, but also possibly very powerful, which was definitely not comparable to ordinary gangsters. Su Weifeng said disdainfully, "Do we need to bring people to deal with the garbage you brought? There are only 2 of us. You can call out those garbage and deal with them. I really don't want to waste so much time with garbage like you." "Okay, boy, you are so eager to die, so I will help you," Wu Changyao said, and picked up the phone directly. "Huzi, let's get started." As soon as Wu Changyao put down the phone, there was a chaotic sound of footsteps outside, and then 5 or 6 big men rushed in, especially the leader, who was more than 1.9 meters tall and as strong as an iron tower. With a face full of flesh, it makes people's legs weak. This strong man alone seems to be enough, not to mention the other few people, who are holding sticks in their hands, which makes them more powerful. Qiao Yushan's face turned pale in an instant. These people are not good people at first glance. They may even be the kind of people who are mixed in the underworld. Such people are the most difficult to deal with. Haha. Wu Changyao laughed proudly and said, "Boy, aren't you very arrogant? Come on, now you continue to be arrogant. I want to see how arrogant you can be." Chapter 79. So arrogant. Su Weifeng sat there motionless, smiling at Wu Changyao, which made Wu Changyao feel very unhappy. He said with a gloomy face, "Boy, don't you know who I brought with me? Then I tell you, this is Huzi, the right-hand man of Brother Bao." Qiao Yushan's face suddenly changed. She had no contact with these people, but she had heard about Brother Bao about some business problems of the company. He was definitely a very difficult person. This time Wu Changyao called Brother Bao's people here. Not to mention, whether this matter is more difficult to solve, how can she and Su Weifeng get out of this situation? Seeing Qiao Yushan's face, Wu Changyao smiled and said, "Boss Qiao, can you now consider the advice I gave you at the beginning?" Qiao Yushan's face became even uglier. Wu Changyao had completely torn his face. He would not really use a tough way to possess her, right? Su Weifeng looked at Huzi and said calmly, "We meet again." Wu Changyao was immediately shocked and asked, "Do you know each other?" "Of course I know you. We just had a fight a few days ago." Su Weifeng answered with a smile. Wu Changyao felt relieved. He was really afraid that Su Weifeng had a relationship with Huzi and the others, so he had come to them in vain. Since they were enemies, it would be even better. He laughed and said, "Huzi, let's solve the new and old grudges together." Huzi's face was extremely ugly at this time, including those people. The reason was very simple. These people had participated in the last conflict with Su Weifeng. They all knew that, even if they were added together, they were no match for Su Weifeng. Wu Changyao finally had some doubts at this time. After he said that, shouldn't Huzi and the others rush up and beat Su Weifeng up? Why are they still standing there motionless? This is not their style at all. What are you doing? Wu Changyao frowned and turned to look at Huzi with a hint of dissatisfaction in his words. Huzi groaned and said, "We can't take this job." "Can't take it? What do you mean?" Wu Changyao screamed. Huzi ignored Wu Changyao, clasped his fists towards Su Weifeng, and said, "We can't beat you, so we are leaving." Qiao Yushan felt relieved when she heard this. She looked at Su Weifeng and was very excited. This guy is simply a monster. The other side is 5 big men, but they have already surrendered before they even started to fight. Wu Changyao screamed again, "Huzi, are you kidding me? You said you can't beat him. What about the 5 of you? Come on together." Huzi glared and said, "Last time, there were more than 10 of us, and Brother Bao was there, but we still couldn't beat him." This was very straightforward. Fuck. Wu Changyao suddenly burst out with swear words. He had found Huzi and the others this time, just to beat Su Weifeng to vent his anger. He didn't expect that Huzi and the others couldn't beat Su Weifeng. Moreover, from what he said, Su Weifeng had even beaten Brother Bao. The most important thing was that, after beating Brother Bao, this guy was still fine. What kind of person is he? Su Weifeng looked up at Huzi and said slowly, "If I wasn't here, would you have beaten him?" Huzi said without hesitation, "Yes, we must beat those who we can beat." Su Weifeng snorted and said, "Then you all slap yourself 10 times before leaving." Huzi glared and said, "Don't bully me too much." Qiao Yushan was also shocked and hurriedly poked Su Weifeng's leg under the table. These people didn't cause trouble, which was a blessing. Why did Su Weifeng still cause trouble? The most important thing was to let the other party slap himself 10 times at once, which seemed really excessive. Su Weifeng said coldly, "You are people who don't know right from wrong and bully others at will. Do you know how bad it feels to be bullied? Yes, I will bully you today. If you don't slap me, I will do it for you." Wu Changyao was suddenly happy. He didn't believe that Uzi and his people couldn't beat Su Weifeng. It must be that Su Weifeng had some background, so Uzi was cautious. But now Su Weifeng's request would definitely anger Uzi, and the fight would definitely start again. Humph, Kit, you are really pretending to be big. I have seen people looking for death, but I have never seen people looking for death like you. A little brother behind Uzi suddenly turned around and ran out. Plop. I don't know what happened. Before the little brother reached the door, his feet suddenly softened, and he fell forward. Before he fell, he wanted to support himself with his arms, but he didn't know why his hands lost strength all of a sudden, and his whole face hit the ground. When he raised his head again, he was already bleeding from his nose and his front teeth were loose. Su Weifeng said calmly, "If any of you still want to run, you can try. 10 slaps. I don't want to say it a second time." Uzi looked at the plate in front of Su Weifeng's table. There were clearly 2 chopsticks there just now, but now the chopsticks have disappeared. Swallowing hard, Uzi raised his hand and slapped himself, and it was a very hard one. Uzi slapped himself a few times, and found that the younger brothers behind him were looking at him stupidly. He shouted angrily, "What the hell are you doing? Are you waiting for me to slap you? Pa pa pa." The younger brothers came to their senses and slapped themselves in the face. Even the one who fell to the ground just now did the same. Qiao Yushan and Wu Changyao were both stunned at this time. Their eyes were about to pop out. Qiao Yushan was already shocked, but Wu Changyao's heart was like a storm. He could find Uzi to help him out, which meant that he was very familiar with Uzi and Brother Bayo, and knew a lot about them. Apart from other things, he was absolutely clear about their power and their ferocity. This group of guys usually only beat others up, and when have they ever been beaten up by others? Now they even slapped themselves in the face, which was enough to show that Su Weifeng was definitely not someone that Brother Bayo and his friends could afford to offend. Bang! The slapping sound finally stopped, and Su Weifeng waved his hand and said, "Get lost." He was not polite to Uzi and his friends at all. These people might be loyal to their own people, but they would definitely do a lot of things to oppress others, so Su Weifeng had no good impression of them at all. As a soldier, his duty was to defend his country, and this kind of people who bully others by taking advantage of their power were what Su Weifeng hated the most. Chapter 80. I'm not interested in playing with you. Before Uzi left, he looked back at Su Weifeng, his eyes filled with humiliation, anger, and fear. Su Weifeng didn't care. It would be better if these guys didn't mess with him again, or he wouldn't mind rubbing them hard on the ground. The room was quiet at this time, and then the chaotic breathing of Wu Changyao and Qiao Yushan became prominent. "Do you think that you can control everything just because you are a good fighter?" Wu Changyao swallowed hard and stared at Su Weifeng. "This is a society ruled by law. If you dare to touch me, I will sue you until you are bankrupt." Without those scoundrels around, Qiao Yushan's mind became clear at this time. She sneered and said, "Director Wu, you really changed very quickly. You found so many people, but you didn't think about the law. Now these people can't support you, and you talk about the law again." Wu Changyao said with a gloomy face, "So what, Qiao Yushan? No matter what, you still have to repay the loan. You can't borrow from other banks. If you want to fight me, then let's fight to the end. I have plenty of ways to kill you." Su Weifeng sneered and said, "It's a pity that I don't have that much mood to play with you. This is not something you can decide, kid. Force does make people afraid, but in today's society, there is not much place to use force. It depends on connections, power, and background. I haven't had enough fun with this matter. You want to end it, but it's impossible." Su Weifeng smiled and said, "Really? Well, let me show you something." He picked up his phone, opened a folder, and pushed the phone over. Before Qiao Yushan had time to look at it, the phone was already in front of Wu Changyao, which made her very curious. What did Su Weifeng take out? But it must not be simple, because Wu Changyao only took a look and his face changed. This is impossible. You are making it up. Wu Changyao held Su Weifeng's phone tightly and roared angrily. Su Weifeng said calmly, whether it is made up or not, you know it yourself. Then, Mr. Su. Wu Changyao swallowed hard and even changed the way he addressed Su Weifeng. He smiled and stood up and came to Su Weifeng's side. This Mr. Su, I didn't recognize the great man. I will not withdraw the loan from Mr. Qiao's company, and I will lend you another 20 million. No. As long as Mr. Qiao needs it, I will lend you as much as you want. Qiao Yushan was really a little frightened. What kind of handle did Su Weifeng have on Wu Changyao that made Wu Changyao make such a promise? Su Weifeng looked at Wu Changyao as if he was looking at air and said calmly, I think these things are no longer something you can decide. What do you mean? Wu Changyao asked stutteringly. I'm just telling you that these things, including your superiors, including the Discipline Inspection Commission, have all seen them. Wu Changyao suddenly jumped up, pointing at Su Weifeng like crazy and yelling, do you want to beat me to death? Su Weifeng showed a teasing smile on his face and said, you're right, I just want to beat you to death. Do you have such a big grudge against me? Killing is not enough. I have admitted my mistake. I have agreed to give you the loan. You still want to beat me like this? You are really going too far. Too much? Su Weifeng suddenly stood up and shouted, do your job in your position. What you do not only represents yourself, but also represents your industry. You rely on the power in your hands to force Yushan to go to bed with you. You have completely lost the bottom line as a human being. For a bastard like you who is not even a human being, you must not give you any chance. Well said. Qiao Yushan couldn't help but clap her hands. What she said was really domineering, really manly, and most importantly, she had a kind of upright blood. Wu Changyao's lips trembled, and after a while he gritted his teeth and said, boy, you are too naive. Do you really think that, even if you have these things, you can touch me? Do you think your backing is strong enough, so no one can touch you? Su Weifeng narrowed his eyes. Wu Changyao's eyes were red, like a mad dog, shouting at the top of his lungs. Yes, I have a backing, I have a background. So what? I tell you, even if you see these things, they will still be in my hands. I will still be my director, and you still don't think about getting a penny of loan. At this time, footsteps were heard at the door, and then 3 men walked in. The middle one was in his 40s, and the other 2 were less than 30 years old. They all had expressionless faces and stared at Wu Changyao. Who are you? Who let you in? Get out. Wu Changyao yelled at the 3 people. The man in the middle took out a certificate and said, we are from the Commission for Discipline Inspection. Wu Changyao, please cooperate. The Commission for Discipline Inspection is shit. Discipline. Wu Changyao just shouted arrogantly, and then those 2 words seemed to have magic power, directly draining away all his strength. He could only utter the word G, and the word witty at the end was stuck in his mouth, and he couldn't say it anyway. The other 2 young men, one on the left and one on the right, held Wu Changyao hostage and said, please cooperate. Wu Changyao felt his legs were going weak. He knew very well that the Commission for Discipline Inspection came here directly to find him. This meant that they had enough evidence and were here to arrest him. He was afraid that something was really going to happen. Before being carried out of the door, Wu Changyao turned his head and looked at Su Weifeng, his eyes full of regret, but his regret was definitely not because he shouldn't abuse his power for personal gain, but because he regretted provoking Su Weifeng. Qiao Yushan felt that her brain was not enough. The situation changed too quickly. It was less than half an hour since she came in, and the arrogant Wu Changyao was taken away by the Commission for Discipline Inspection. The music on her cell phone sounded. Qiao Yushan saw that it was an unfamiliar number. After hesitating for a while, she answered it. Hello, is this Qiao Yushan, the general manager of Linfeng Company? It was a man's voice. It sounded like a middle-aged man, but there was a kind of demeanor in his words. Yes, may I ask who you are? Qiao Yushan asked politely. I'm Feng Gang from 30 Bank. I'm responsible for your company's loan now. Ah, then Wu Changyao. Qiao Yushan asked in surprise. I have taken over his position now. I know that General Manager Qiao's matter is more urgent, so I will communicate with you first, and then see how to renew the loan, or if there is any need for subsequent loans. Ah. Qiao Yushan exclaimed, and turned to look at Su Weifeng. Chapter 81. I'm your girlfriend now. You did all this? After a long while, Qiao Yushan finally recovered from her shock, and stared at Su Weifeng and asked, I guess so. Su Weifeng did not deny it, then picked up the chopsticks and said, oh, I forgot one thing. I forgot to ask that bastard to pay the bill. Now we have to pay for these things ourselves. Qiao Yushan's face darkened, and she said, you actually knocked Director Wu down directly. You. She didn't know how to describe it. Su Weifeng took a bite of food and stuffed it into his mouth. While chewing, he said vaguely, come and eat the food. We spent our own money. It would be a big loss if we don't eat it. You. Qiao Yushan's mouth twitched, then she picked up the chopsticks and directly picked up food for Su Weifeng, saying, eat. You just know how to eat. I will accompany you to eat today. After eating for a while, Qiao Yushan's resentment disappeared, and then she slowed down her tone and said, Weifeng, thank you so much this time. Su Weifeng took a sip of water and said, it's nothing. Although I'm your fake boyfriend, I still have to fulfill my responsibility to protect my girlfriend. If you say so, I really can't say thank you to you anymore. How did you do it? Wu Changyao has a strong background. In just a few days, you sent him to jail. Su Weifeng leaned back, burped comfortably, and said, I don't have that much ability. It's just that someone happened to be investigating him, and let me know, so I just gave him an assist. So that's how it is. Qiao Yushan felt relieved for some reason. It seemed that everything made sense. If this matter was really manipulated by Su Weifeng, then Su Weifeng was too scary. Su Weifeng chuckled and said, do you still think that I did it all by myself? Qiao Yushan's tone was also much more relaxed. She said, that's what I said. I also think it's scary. After dinner, the two left directly. Qiao Yushan drove Su Weifeng directly to the downstairs of his house. Su Weifeng didn't get out of the car directly. He said, today is Thursday, and the day after tomorrow is Saturday. Can you go to my grandma's house? You have helped me so much, and I will definitely try my best to make time. But because of the funding issue, the company is in a mess these 2 days. I'm really afraid that I can't make time. If I can't go on Saturday, then I will let Zhuangxuan go for me. Do you think it's okay? Qiao Yushan's tone was completely a tone of negotiation. Su Weifeng nodded and said, if it's too much trouble, I'll just tell my mom. Qiao Yushan shook her head and said, that's not good. After all, I promised my aunt a long time ago that, if I can't go, she will be very disappointed. I can't go back on my word. Well, then you can do whatever you want. Su Weifeng got out of the car, waved his hand, and went straight into the community. On Friday afternoon, Qiao Yushan sent a message to Su Weifeng. I'm really sorry, I can't go, so I can only let Zhuangxuan go for me. I've already told her. Not 2 minutes after Qiao Yushan sent the message, Lin Zhuangxuan stormed into Su Weifeng's office. With a small hand slapping on the desk, Lin Zhuangxuan snorted and said, hey, can't you two just have a good relationship? You actually asked me to replace you when you go back to meet the elders. Aren't you a bit too much? Su Weifeng shrugged his shoulders and said, I also said no, but your sister said it was impolite. If you don't want to go, then I'll find another excuse. In fact, this is not a big deal. I didn't say I won't go. Are you giving me a cold look? Lin Zhuangxuan glared at Su Weifeng unhappily. Su Weifeng said sincerely, I didn't. I just feel bad about letting you replace me like this. Humph, what can I do? My sister just can't tell the difference between the important and the unimportant. How can I refuse such a big thing as meeting the parents? Forget it. For her lifelong event, I can only bite the bullet and help you one more time. As he spoke, the WeChat notification sound on Lin Zhuangxuan's mobile phone rang. Lin Zhuangxuan quickly took a look and then sent a voice message back. Auntie, I'll pick you up tomorrow morning. Do I need to buy anything? Oh, it's my first time going there. I can't go empty-handed. Especially for my grandma's birthday. I have to prepare some gifts, otherwise it would be so rude. Lin Zhuangxuan was obviously chatting with his mother, which made Su Weifeng wonder what was going on. How could Lin Zhuangxuan still chat with his mother? Lin Zhuangxuan said a few words, came close to Su Weifeng, and said proudly, "Are you surprised?" Su Weifeng nodded and said, "Yes, you are talking to my mother? Did you give you your sister's WeChat? Do you think my sister is stupid? My sister is smart. She has changed the WeChat number for talking to my aunt. She and I can log into this number. In this way, there will be no problem when I use her identity." Su Weifeng gave a thumbs up and said, "You two are really thoughtful." Lin Zhuangxuan said with a smile, "That's a must. We have to love what we do. Now impersonating my sister is also a kind of training for my acting skills. Art comes from life. Now that you have opened a film and television company, do you still lack opportunities to perform? That's different. For those acting, you always have to prepare the script in advance, so the direction of the story is clear. But impersonating my sister is completely different. Although there is a general direction, it is full of uncertainty. It is very challenging, so I think it's very fun." Su Weifeng chuckled and said, "Life is like a play. In fact, we are acting every day, but you are just acting yourself." Lin Zhuangxuan looked at Su Weifeng in surprise and said, "Great, you can say such philosophical words. Have you heard that philosophical song?" Su Weifeng was confused and said, "Philosophical song? The mountain road here has 18 bends, and the waterway here has 9 links. PFFT, this philosophy, you really made me laugh to death." Su Weifeng made Lin Zhuangxuan laugh. This time it was Lin Zhuangxuan's turn to widen his eyes, look at Su Weifeng, and said, "I said you are not deliberately cooperating with me, are you? What's wrong? It's really funny. You have a sense of humor." Su Weifeng looked at Lin Zhuangxuan with a smile. "PFFT, big brother, you're so funny. This is a crosstalk joke. I thought you've heard it before." Lin Zhuangxuan couldn't help laughing and said, "Boss of our company, you should be more sensitive to things in the entertainment industry, right? Boss Lin is right. Now I'm Boss Qiao. Be careful with your address, and besides." Lin Zhuangxuan put her hand on Su Weifeng's shoulder, leaned over, and said, "I'm still your girlfriend. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels." Chapter 80 To the True Meaning of Life. Boss Su. Su Weifeng's office door was not closed. When Sun Yumeng came to the door, she saw Lin Zhuangxuan leaning on Su Weifeng. She let out a low cry, her face flushed, and she wanted to leave immediately. Lin Zhuangxuan actually maintained this posture and said, "Come in." Sun Yumeng stood at the door and stammered, "I'll come back later." "Come in if I tell you to." Lin Zhuangxuan raised his eyebrows, then stood up straight, and then gave Su Weifeng a warning look, walked out directly, and then closed the door. Sun Yumeng came to Su Weifeng's desk, her face red, and she said timidly, "Boss Su, I didn't mean it. I won't say anything." Su Weifeng smiled slightly and said, "Nothing. Boss Lin and I studied a role, and she got into the role." Sun Yumeng immediately said with admiration, Boss Lin is amazing. I couldn't tell she was acting just now. I thought she was real." Su Weifeng laughed and said, "A good director must have good acting skills. Otherwise how can you tell whether others are good or bad? By the way, what do you want to see me for?" This is the first time she came to see him. Sun Yumeng clenched her fists and opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Her face became even redder, as if she was a little scared. "Just say whatever you want to say, don't be afraid." Su Weifeng encouraged her. Sun Yumeng took another deep breath and said, "Boss Su, I have an idea. This is a short play I wrote. I think I can play the characters well, so please give me a chance." Su Weifeng said with a smile, "Can you write a script yourself? I like acting, but I also know that without a certain level of accomplishment, the characters I play are soulless. So I usually like to read books and study the characters in other plays. But I don't know if what I wrote is good or not. I wanted to show it to the screenwriter, but they didn't show it to me." Su Weifeng chuckled and said, "You are stealing someone's job. It's normal that they don't show it to you." Then I'll help you take a look. Thank you, Boss Su. Thank you, Boss Su. Sun Yumeng bowed to Su Weifeng, her little face flushed with excitement, then took out her mobile phone and sent a file to Su Weifeng. Okay, I'll take a look in the next 2 days. Su Weifeng nodded. Then I'll go out first. Sun Yumeng walked out happily. A few days ago, when Su Weifeng was working in the company, there were always some actresses who came to him for no reason, saying that they wanted to talk about work, but they all showed a little intention of currying favor with him. As a result, when Zheng Shiking came that day, Lin Zhuangxuan appeared directly as Su Weifeng's girlfriend, and these actresses became honest one by one, and no longer dared to come to Su Weifeng for no reason. If this made Lin Zhuangxuan, the boss, unhappy, then they would not have to work here. Su Weifeng directly opened the file that Sun Yumeng gave him, and read it carefully. It must be said that the story was quite warm. At least Su Weifeng could read it in one breath. And there were also touching parts. What are you looking at? So serious? Lin Zhuangxuan came in, stood behind Su Weifeng, and tilted her head to look at Su Weifeng's mobile phone. Su Weifeng said, "This is a small script written by Sun Yumeng. I think it's very good. You can take a look at it too. She can also write scripts." Lin Zhuangxuan was a little surprised. "Yeah, I just think it's good, based on my own feeling. I need professionals like you to take a look. Why did she give it to you instead of giving it to me directly?" Lin Zhuangxuan looked at Su Weifeng with suspicion. Su Weifeng rolled his eyes at her and said, "You are a very busy boss, and your image in the company is more majestic than mine, so I didn't dare to give it to you. TSK, you found a reason for her." Lin Zhuangxuan also rolled her eyes at Su Weifeng. "Don't always look at people with tinted glasses. I'm such an upright person that I won't be tempted, even if someone offers themselves to me. I don't believe you." Lin Zhuangxuan argued with Su Weifeng for a few words, then started reading the script. After a while, he said, "It's really good, but the story is a little simple and lacks some twists and turns. But the theme is fine. If it is refined a little and the plot has 2 more twists, it should still be usable." Su Weifeng said, "It seems that Sun Yumeng is still a promising talent. You can take her with you later. They came to find you, so naturally you need to take care of this matter. In addition, it's a good opportunity to hone your professional skills. Otherwise, it seems that you are really a hands-off boss here, so I'll find you something to do." Su Weifeng smiled and said, "This is a beautiful girl. Are you at ease? If it were someone else, I might be worried, but Sun Yumeng won't seduce you. As long as others don't seduce you, you can still keep yourself clean. I still believe in you on this point. Then don't you make sarcastic remarks from time to time." Su Weifeng rolled his eyes at Lin Zhuangxuan. Lin Zhuangxuan smiled smugly and said, "I'm reminding you, otherwise you will be arrogant." Next, Lin Zhuangxuan discussed the problems and directions of the script with Su Weifeng. This was also the first time that Su Weifeng studied professional things with Lin Zhuangxuan. Listening to Lin Zhuangxuan's clear and logical talk, and many things he had never thought of before, Su Weifeng couldn't help but look at Lin Zhuangxuan with new eyes. Lin Zhuangxuan, this girl, usually looks lively and naughty, but when she is serious, she is also meticulous and talented. Why are you looking at me like that? Do you admire me very much?" Lin Zhuangxuan stopped and suddenly tilted her head to look at Su Weifeng with a smile. Su Weifeng smiled slightly and said, "I can sense the shadow of your sister in you. When your sister is serious, she is almost the same as you. Well, don't compare me with her. She doesn't care about anything else in her life except work, but I'm different. I do this to find happiness for myself." Su Weifeng said, "He is successful in his work, which is also a kind of happiness. No, this is absolutely different. I don't care about the result, and I don't care whether I succeed or not. I just find happiness in doing this, while my sister only cares about the result. She will only be happy when she succeeds in something in the end. The process is completely painful." Su Weifeng gave Lin Zhuangxuan a thumbs up and said, "Zhuangxuan, you will live an extremely happy life." Chapter 83 My Mom's Scheme. On Friday night, Su Weifeng's parents, Su Qiango, also rushed back. He was a man with a slightly old-fashioned personality. He was usually serious and always had a stern face. However, he had no status in front of Shenji. When Shenji glared at him, he could only obey. At 6:50 on Saturday morning, there was a knock on the door, and Su Weifeng hurried over to welcome Lin Zhuangxuan in. Yushan, why are you here? Didn't I ask you to wait in the car? Shenji said with a smile. I was thinking about whether I could help get some things. Lin Zhuangxuan seemed a little nervous today. After all, it was the first time she met Su Weifeng's father. Shenji smiled and said, Old Su, you see how sensible our daughter-in-law is. Su Qianguo also nodded repeatedly. At least this first impression really made him feel good. Lin Zhuangxuan hurriedly greeted Su Qianguo and then went over to help Shenji organize things. As Shenji spoke, he also reassured Lin Zhuangxuan, you don't have to pay attention to that old man. He has a poker face. In this family, what I say is final. Lin Zhuangxuan didn't know whether to nod or not and was a little embarrassed for a moment. Su Weifeng came over and said, Mom, you have to save face for our dad in front of others. Shenji said, when have I never saved face for your dad in front of outsiders? Yushan is not an outsider. She is one of our family members. Why should I pretend like that? Old Su, don't you think I'm right? Su Qianguo said helplessly, can I say I'm wrong? What do you think? Shenji raised his chin, then said to Qiao Yushan with a smile, Yushan, this man can't be spoiled. In the future, you can deal with Weifeng however you want. I will definitely stand on your side. Thank you, auntie. Lin Zhuangxuan nodded repeatedly, turned her head, and blinked proudly at Su Weifeng. Su Qianguo looked at Su Weifeng sympathetically and said, son, your father didn't lay a good foundation for you. It seems that you have to follow my old path in this life. Shenji glared and said, you are still not convinced. What's the matter? Do you think you are not happy following me for the rest of your life? Su Qianguo said hurriedly, happy, I have adapted to it, but I also want my son to be better than me. But you, as a mother, sold your son out without doing anything. After packing up the things, Su Weifeng basically took 80% of the things, and then Su Qianguo took some. Lin Zhuangxuan wanted to help, and Shenji directly took her hand and walked to the front, saying, this kind of physical work must be done by men, otherwise it will not reflect their masculinity. We can't deprive them of the opportunity. Lin Zhuangxuan said humbly, okay, I remember. Su Qianguo and Su Weifeng looked at each other in the back, and then shook their heads at the same time. After getting in the car, Su Weifeng was responsible for driving. This time, Shenji took Su Qianguo to sit in the back, and Lin Zhuangxuan sat in the co-pilot seat. It takes about 4 hours to drive from Su Weifeng's home to his grandmother's home, which is more than 300 kilometers. After driving for a while, Shenji took out 2 apples, handed one to Lin Zhuangxuan, and said, Yushan, have an apple. It's a bit big, I can't eat it. Lin Zhuangxuan took the apple, a little embarrassed. Shenji said casually, you and Weifeng can share one. Lin Zhuangxuan saw that Shenji did not hand her a fruit knife, and after taking a few bites, she handed the apple to Su Qianguo. Su Qianguo took it and ate it directly. Only then did he understand what it meant to share an apple for 2 people. After stealing a glance at Su Weifeng who was driving, Lin Zhuangxuan blushed slightly and then took a bite of the apple gently. The apple was indeed very sweet. After eating 2 bites, Lin Zhuangxuan handed the apple to Su Weifeng and said, you eat it too, it's very sweet. Su Weifeng held the steering wheel with one hand and took the apple with the other hand. He took a big bite and said vaguely, it's really sweet. Shenji said proudly, do you think your mother goes to the vegetable market every day for nothing? She remembers clearly which store has the best food. Otherwise, how could you eat the best things? You little bastard. Yushan gives it to you, and you eat it all. Do you still have your girlfriend in your heart? Seeing Su Weifeng eat most of it in just a few bites, Shenji blamed his son in a bad mood. This son was too unromantic. Su Weifeng quickly passed the apple to Lin Zhuangxuan and said, I thought she didn't want to eat it. Shenji snorted and said, you idiot. Yushan is thinking about you. You are just like your father. Qiao Yushan took the apple handed over by Su Weifeng. It was so tangled. She took 2 bites and handed it to Su Weifeng. It seemed that she could accept it in her heart. At most, Su Weifeng would eat her saliva and let him take advantage of her. But now she wants to eat the rest of Su Weifeng. On it. She stole a glance at Su Weifeng and saw that this guy didn't care at all. She couldn't help feeling a little unhappy. An imposter, paid a lot. Forget it, just eat it. You saved my life. How can I not support you for such a small thing? Giving herself a reason, Lin Zhuangxuan picked up the remaining apple and ate it. There was an indescribable feeling in her heart. Shenji prepared a lot of things, first apples, and then other food. Lin Zhuangxuan felt a little awkward at first eating the same thing with Su Weifeng, but after so many times, she didn't seem to care about it anymore. She took a bite, then leaned over and stuffed it directly into Su Weifeng's mouth so that it wouldn't delay Su Weifeng's driving. Su Weifeng saw his mother's smug look at him through the rearview mirror. He was stunned at first, but soon understood. It turned out that this was all deliberately designed by his mother. It was probably because she saw that the relationship between the two seemed to be good, but in fact, it was not that close. Mom is mom. Her observation is absolutely impeccable, but this also made Su Weifeng feel uneasy. Did mom find out that these girlfriends were all fake? He thought he was very smart. Lin Zhuangxuan and Qiao Yushan both thought that their acting skills were good, but I'm afraid that in the eyes of mom, they were full of loopholes. Su Weifeng even suspected that his mother had already seen that the relationship between the two was fake, and then deliberately pretended to be confused, slowly turning the fake into real. However, Su Weifeng didn't dare to ask his mother about his suspicions. What if his mother didn't find out? That would mean he had confessed. Then his mother would get mad again and ask him to go on blind dates with a bunch of women. He would be driven crazy, so it was better to pretend to be ignorant. Chapter 84, Slap in the Face. More than 2 hours later, mom and dad fell asleep in the back. Su Weifeng turned to look at Lin Zhuangxuan and said, "You should take a nap too." Lin Zhuangxuan shook her head and said, "I'm not sleepy. Besides, if I fall asleep, it will be so lonely driving alone." Su Weifeng smiled and said, "It's not far. When I was in the army, I drove for 12 hours without stopping at most." Lin Zhuangxuan said, "How can that be compared with the army? Anyway, I'll just chat with you. Why don't you tell me something about your army? Otherwise, it's boring, and it can also give me some creative materials." Su Weifeng thought about it and picked some interesting things in the army to tell Lin Zhuangxuan. What Su Weifeng could tell was just some basic things. Those things that involved deep levels were all highly confidential and could not be said. But even these things were not accessible to ordinary people, and Lin Zhuangxuan listened with relish. In this way, time seemed to pass quickly, and it was not far from Su Weifeng's grandmother's house. Su Weifeng's grandmother's home is in the mountains. Su Weifeng's parents and his uncle's family have said that they want to bring his grandmother to live in the city, but his grandmother has long been accustomed to living in the mountains, so she would not leave no matter what. In the end, the two families had no choice but to follow his wishes. After all, there is still Su Weifeng's uncle's family here, so it's not that no one is taking care of his grandmother. Entering the mountain road, the scenery on both sides of the road is much better, and Lin Zhuangxuan is more energetic. He took out his mobile phone and kept taking pictures. At this time, Shenji had already woken up, and he became excited all of a sudden. Su Qianguo knew what his wife was thinking now, and he coughed lightly and said, "Forget it when you meet Big Brother and the others later." Shenji chuckled and said, "I didn't mean to do anything. Don't worry, my son has taught me that if we want to pretend, we can't just say it verbally. It's enough to let others see it. As long as Yushan shows up, it will be enough to slap your uncle and the others in the face." Chenlan is still from Yushan's company. This time she must be so shocked that her jaw drops. Lin Zhuangxuan's face turned black, and she turned to look at Su Weifeng. Su Weifeng hurriedly said, "Chenlan is the daughter-in-law of my uncle's family. She works in your company and seems to be a deputy director." Lin Zhuangxuan nodded quickly and said, "So it's Chenlan. That's really a coincidence. I didn't expect that there is such a relative in my company." Shenji chuckled and said, "Yushan, if you can take care of her, please take care of her. If you can't, don't force it." Su Qianguo said unhappily, "Don't put pressure on the child. What's the point of taking care of him? How can the management of this big company be like our state-owned enterprises? They are all based on systems. Countless people are watching you. If you do something out of line, you will lose your leadership prestige. Shenji rolled his eyes and said, I'm just talking. Lin Zhuangxuan hurriedly said, uncle and aunt, don't worry. Since Sister Chenlan has become the deputy minister, it means she is capable. It shouldn't be difficult to get promoted. When hiring people, I still need to hire people I can trust. Shenji snorted and said, look at Yushan, she knows how to do things, not as old-fashioned as you. While talking, Su Weifeng's car had arrived in the village. There were colorful flags on both sides of the road. Following the colorful flags, they drove all the way and soon arrived at the door of Grandma's house. In front of Grandma's house, the eldest uncle and the third uncle's family were standing at the door chatting. Grandma's birthday is tomorrow, and not many relatives have come yet. Why hasn't the second son come yet? Didn't he say he would be here soon? The eldest aunt looked at the intersection and said casually, Su Weifeng's third aunt is an honest and decent rural woman. She said, sister-in-law, why are you so anxious? There is nothing to do today. The eldest aunt chuckled and said, you don't know this. Your second sister-in-law said that Weifeng found a girlfriend who is a boss. She wants to bring her here this time. I'm anxious to see her. The third aunt immediately exclaimed exaggeratedly, Weifeng is such a promising kid. He even found a boss. The eldest aunt rolled her eyes at her and said, look at you. You don't know what kind of person your second sister-in-law is. You are so concerned about face all day long. Seeing that my Chenlan works in a big company, she insisted that her Weifeng also found a big boss. The funniest thing is that she said that this boss is Chenlan's boss. Do you know how powerful the boss of Chenlan's company is? She is young, beautiful, and capable. How could she be Weifeng's girlfriend? It really makes me laugh. Is that so? That's a bit of an exaggeration. The third aunt also looked like she agreed with it. Hey, Mercedes-Benz S-Class, whose car is this? Su Yuqiang looked at the car that was slowly passing by and looked at the elders in confusion. The aunt shook her head and said, I don't know. I haven't heard of anyone buying such a car. If someone bought such a luxury car, they would definitely say it and show it off. Chenlan was stunned at this time and suddenly pointed at the car and stammered, this car. What's wrong with this car? Su Yuqiang asked in confusion. Chenlan's face became even more panicked and she said, this car is our company's car. Ordinary people can't use it normally. Your company's car? This? Who borrowed your company's car? The aunt said subconsciously. Chenlan grinned and said, this car is for business exchanges in our company. Usually only President Qiao can arrange it. But her face changed immediately and she said, no way, could it be? At this time, the car stopped, the door opened, and Shenji jumped out first. Shenji! The aunt exclaimed immediately. It was just a suspicion before, but now it is completely proven. Shenji showed a bright smile and said, we are late. Why are you all standing at the door, as if to welcome us? Su Weifeng also laughed in his heart. His mother was really a little ostentatious, but this kind of ostentation made Su Weifeng feel more real. Lin Zhuangxuan was a junior, and at this time he quickly opened the car door and got out of the car. Boss Qiao! Chenlan exclaimed immediately. Lin Zhuangxuan didn't know Chenlan, but after hearing this voice, she knew that this was Chenlan, and nodded to Chenlan with a smile. Yushan, come here, let me introduce you. This is Uncle Weifeng, this is Auntie. Lin Zhuangxuan hurriedly greeted them one by one. Uncle and Auntie were fine, but they felt that Su Weifeng's girlfriend was beautiful, and they heard that she was a CEO, but Auntie's face was very ugly at this time, and she opened her mouth dryly, but she couldn't say anything. She didn't believe what Shenji said all the time, and she was also sarcastic. Now that the people were brought here, this was definitely a naked slap in the face. Chapter 85, Feeling Proud. This is Su Ziqiang, your uncle's eldest brother, and this is Chenlan, Ziqiang's wife. Shenji then introduced them to Lin Zhuangxuan. Hello, brother, hello, sister-in-law. Lin Zhuangxuan still greeted with a smile on her face. Boss Qiao. Chenlan panicked all of a sudden. Although she was a vice president, she actually had no chance to come into contact with Qiao Yushan. In the company, Qiao Yushan's aura was also very strong, and she was afraid of it. Lin Zhuangxuan smiled and said, public affairs are public affairs, and private affairs are private affairs. I really didn't expect that my sister-in-law would be in my company. Please forgive me for my impoliteness. Chen-lan panicked and didn't know what to say. She just nodded repeatedly. Seeing the performance of his uncle's family, Shenji felt so happy. He smiled and said, Chen-lan, we are all family. Don't be so distant. Even if Yushan is the boss of your company, she still has to call you sister-in-law at home. You are so restrained that it makes Yushan uncomfortable. Yes, Qiao. Just call me Yushan. Lin Zhuangxuan said modestly. Yushan. Chen-lan felt that these two words were as heavy as 1,000 gold. After introducing these people, Su Weifeng and his family went into the main house to meet Su Weifeng's grandmother. The old lady was already 90 years old, but her eyes and ears were still sharp. Seeing Su Weifeng, her grandson whom she hadn't seen for many years, and Lin Zhuangxuan, her granddaughter-in-law, she was very happy. When it comes to coaxing people, Lin Zhuangxuan is much better than Qiao Yushan. At this time, she sat next to the old lady, holding her hand, asking about her well-being, and also gave her a valuable gift. The old lady was even happier. She took off the jade bracelet on her wrist and handed it to Lin Zhuangxuan, saying, Yushan, grandma doesn't have any good things. I've worn this bracelet for most of my life. Now I'm giving it to you. Ah! Everyone exclaimed. This jade bracelet is not an ordinary bracelet. It is made of jadeite. Even if it is not the top grade imperial green, the texture is quite good. It is pure old pit Burmese jadeite. 2 years ago, it was appraised, and the value is definitely more than 500,000. The Su family is not a big family, and the old lady has no savings. In addition to the old house, this jade bracelet is the main legacy. It is false to say that everyone does not miss it. Shenji was shocked. If he took this thing, the other two families would be jealous. He hurriedly said, Mom, you can't do this. This is your favorite thing. The old lady laughed and said, I can still live for a few years. Seeing Weifeng find such a good daughter-in-law, I'm also happy. I have to give this bracelet to someone. Now I give it to my granddaughter-in-law. The granddaughter-in-law can also be better to Weifeng, right? But, Shenji frowned. The old lady said with a stern face, I'm still alive now. I can give my things to whoever I want. When I die, you can divide the things I can't take with you in any way you want. The old lady was obviously unhappy. Su Weifeng hurriedly said, Yushan, grandma gives it to you. Just take it. Lin Zhuangxuan was not very clear about the situation at home. Since Su Weifeng said so, she agreed. Grandma put it on her hand. Looking at the bracelet on her wrist, she also liked it very much. Su Weifeng said, Yushan, it's rare that grandma likes you. You can chat with our grandma. Let's go out and chat. Everyone arrived in the yard, and Shenji immediately said, Uncle, third uncle, don't worry, our Yushan will not take this bracelet. She just wants to make mom happy first. Uncle and third uncle's family were relieved. Su Weifeng said, I don't think it's necessary to be so troublesome. I think Yushan also likes this bracelet. Let's consider it as grandma giving it to Yushan. Everyone was stunned for a moment, and their faces looked a little ugly. Su Weifeng smiled again and said, but our family can't take it for nothing. You have an estimate of the value of this bracelet, and then I will buy it. Ah, buy it. The bracelet was appraised last time, and it was said that it could be worth 500,000 or 600,000 yuan. Su Weifeng said, well, even if it's 600,000 yuan, I will give uncle and third uncle 300,000 yuan to your family. Do you think it's okay? Everyone quieted down at once, but Shenji frowned. Why did he feel that his family was at a disadvantage in this matter? At this time, Chen-lan coughed lightly and said, Mom and Dad, second uncle and third uncle, I have a suggestion. This bracelet belongs to grandma, so it belongs to the three of us. If it is discounted at 600,000, then each should get 200,000. Since Qiao Yushan took the bracelet, Weifeng only needs to give each of our two families 200,000. This way, no one loses. The eldest aunt complained to Chen-lan that she was talking nonsense. She was getting 100,000 less for nothing. but suddenly she remembered that her daughter-in-law was Qiao Yushan's subordinate, and she immediately understood and said quickly, I think we should do this. Sooner or later, it will be divided up, and it's the same now. Besides, we don't have to sell it. It's an heirloom, so it can be considered as staying in the family. Su Weifeng smiled slightly and said, since everyone has no objection, I will transfer the money to you. After asking for the account number, Su Weifeng transferred the money directly. The eldest uncle and third uncle's families immediately praised Su Weifeng. After all, this was not a small amount of money, 400,000. Su Weifeng transferred it without hesitation. Shenji felt a little painful. 400,000 was definitely a huge sum of money for the family. But since Su Weifeng did this, they didn't object. After all, they would get a bracelet, so it wouldn't be a loss. Shenji. The aunt pulled Shenji aside, coughed lightly, and said, in the past, I really didn't know what was good for me. Shenji wanted to sneer at this time, but when he thought of Su Weifeng's reminder, he immediately smiled and said, sister-in-law, what are you doing? What's so ungrateful about us? But I have always looked down on you and your Weifeng. It's not your fault. To be honest, when that brat didn't bring the girl back to me, I wouldn't believe it. Who knew that this guy was so capable and actually found such a powerful girlfriend? Yes, this is unbelievable. Weifeng is really amazing. Shenji felt even better now. He patted the back of his aunt's hand and said, sister-in-law, we are all family. There is no need for these polite words. Yes, yes. Shenji looked at his aunt's submissive look. Now he really felt like the pillar of the Su family. This was all brought by his son. No, it was all brought by his daughter-in-law. This daughter-in-law could not be allowed to run away no matter what. Chapter 86 Give you a chance. In the afternoon, more and more relatives came, and it became more and more lively. The most glorious ones were undoubtedly Shenji and Sukianguo. There is a saying that goes, the first 30 years are for the father to respect the son, and the last 30 years are for the son to respect the father. That means that, when children are minors, if others want to respect you, they have to look at your father's achievements. When you are an adult, whether you have achievements or not, then others will not respect your parents. Su Weifeng can directly take out 400,000 yuan to divide between the two families, which has proved that he is very capable. In addition, he has found a CEO girlfriend who is rich and beautiful, so his status is even higher. Therefore, Shenji and Sukianguo's status in the family was raised all of a sudden, and they are basically the representatives of the Su family. Lin Zuangxuan and Su Weifeng are also very busy. The two have to be introduced to the new relatives constantly, and then they will be praised by the relatives. It's okay once or twice, but doing this for the whole afternoon, even Su Weifeng and Lin Zuangxuan are a little overwhelmed, but looking at the proud look of Shenji and Sukianguo, the two can't escape. During dinner, Su Weifeng and Lin Zuangxuan became the protagonists. Many young people came to toast. In such an occasion, if Lin Zuangxuan didn't drink, it would seem a bit disrespectful, so she had to drink a lot of beer. Finally, under Shenji's scolding, those young people stopped forcing Su Weifeng and Lin Zuangxuan, and Su Weifeng and Lin Zuangxuan also found an excuse to escape from the table. The two walked side by side along the path. Su Weifeng said, I'm sorry, young people love to make trouble. This is the first time I've met a big boss like you, so I can't help but be curious. Lin Zuangxuan smiled sweetly and said, it's okay. I think this is fun. There's no such atmosphere in my home. That's good. I was afraid you'd be holding back. No, what else is fun here? Take me to see it. Su Weifeng pointed to the mountain in front and said, when I was a kid, I always ran to the mountain to catch wild rabbits. There should be more on this mountain recently, but it's getting dark, so we can't go up the mountain. I'll take you to the stream at the entrance of the village. After walking for a few minutes, the two came to the stream and found a big rock to sit down. Are there any crayfish? Are there any big black bears that want to eat me? Lin Zuangxuan asked with a smile. When she first met Su Weifeng, they went to catch a lot of crayfish together and met a big black bear. Su Weifeng chuckled and said, it's hard to say. Hunting is not allowed now, so there will be more and more wild animals. I'm not afraid of them, since you are here. Lin Zuangxuan shook slightly and said with a pout, I drank a little too much, and you didn't even help me up. Su Weifeng put his arm around Lin Zhuangxuan's waist, and Lin Zhuangxuan leaned her head on Su Weifeng's shoulder and closed her eyes. The two sat quietly for a while, and Lin Zhuangxuan opened her eyes again and said, "The water in this stream is very clear. I want to soak my feet." Su Weifeng smiled and said, "Sure." Lin Zhuangxuan raised her legs and put her calves directly on Su Weifeng's legs, saying, "Then help me take off my shoes." Su Weifeng was stunned for a moment, staring at Lin Zhuangxuan in a daze. Lin Zhuangxuan pouted and said, "Aren't you a foot control? I'm giving you a chance now, why don't you take advantage of it?" Su Weifeng smiled and said, "You're not giving me a chance, you're just testing me. Then hurry up. Okay, since you've helped me so much this time, I should serve you in any way." Su Weifeng smiled and reached out to take off Lin Zhuangxuan's shoes. Lin Zhuangxuan was wearing long pants and high heels today, so it was easy to take them off. And socks. Lin Zhuangxuan shook her feet. "You need me for this?" Su Weifeng looked at Lin Zhuangxuan in surprise. "Didn't you say you would serve me well? What's the matter, do you think it's dirty?" Lin Zhuangxuan pouted even more. "Of course not, but..." Lin Zhuangxuan shook her shoulders and said coquettishly, "Then take it off. I don't want to move at all now." Su Weifeng's eyes slowly showed a doting look and said, "Okay, I'll take it off for me." He reached out and took off her socks and put them in her shoes. Lin Zhuangxuan nodded in satisfaction and said, "That's more like it. By the way, roll up my trouser legs too. You." Su Weifeng patted Lin Zhuangxuan's calf gently and then gently rolled up her trousers. Lin Zhuangxuan smiled mischievously at Su Weifeng and said, "The classmate who loves feet, don't you take advantage of this opportunity?" Su Weifeng patted Lin Zhuangxuan's feet again and pretended to be angry and said, "If you do this again, I will really take advantage of you." Lin Zhuangxuan chuckled and put her two little feet in the water. Hiss. "It's so cool. Do you want to soak in the water too?" "Yes, I'll soak in the water too." Su Weifeng took off his shoes and socks in a few seconds and soaked his feet in the water. Lin Zhuangxuan kicked the water twice, then leaned her head on Su Weifeng's shoulder again. After a while, she said softly, "You know, I have always had a picture in my mind." "What picture?" Lin Zhuangxuan closed her eyes and said faintly, "It's a man and a woman sitting by the stream, just like us, soaking our feet in the water, sitting quietly for a day, with green mountains and green waters in the background, and insects and birds singing in the ears. I think that is definitely a beautiful picture." "Oh, it doesn't seem to be a big deal." Su Weifeng looked around. Lin Zhuangxuan opened his eyes, glared at Su Weifeng, and said, "You really ruined the atmosphere. This picture is so beautiful, especially when shot from the back. It has a hazy beauty. I must take a picture of this picture in the future, and then you will know." Okay, I, a rough man, may not understand the ideas of you as an artist. Then don't talk, experience it well. Lin Zhuangxuan glared at Su Weifeng again, and then closed his eyes again. Su Weifeng looked at Lin Zhuangxuan's face from the corner of his eyes. This feeling seemed to be quite good, but it seemed impossible to experience the kind of beauty that Lin Zhuangxuan said. Hoo. After about 10 minutes, Lin Zhuangxuan actually fell asleep, which made Su Weifeng laugh and cry. "Such a beautiful scene, you fell asleep, wouldn't it ruin the mood?" Chapter 87. Look at your dirty expression. Su Weifeng suddenly felt distressed. Lin Zhuangxuan had been running so far since early morning, and she didn't rest much when she got here. She fell asleep just because she was tired. Lin Zhuangxuan's head slid, and her body leaned towards Su Weifeng's arms. Su Weifeng gently held her head, and then let her head rest on his legs, so that she could sleep more comfortably. Just looking down at Lin Zhuangxuan's face, Su Weifeng suddenly felt an indescribable peace in his heart, and the whole person also felt an indescribable relaxation. Although Su Weifeng looked very relaxed after returning to the city, in fact, his nerves were too tense over the years. Even after returning home, the tense nerves did not completely relax. But at this time, he really felt completely relaxed. There was no such life and death moment in his mind anymore, and the whole person was surrounded by a kind of tranquility. He was seriously injured last time. Even though the external injuries had healed, the internal injuries were very serious. This was also the main reason for his return. Although he had been recuperating these days, the effect was not obvious. At this moment, the chaotic internal breath seemed to be somewhat calm, and it was able to flow slowly along the meridians. This made Su Weifeng secretly surprised. He did not dare to think about it, nor did he dare to actively circulate the breath in his body. He just let this special feeling move freely with the breath. This feeling was really wonderful, and Su Weifeng was immersed in it unconsciously, forgetting the time, forgetting where he was, and forgetting that there was a sleeping Lin Zhuangxuan on his legs. It was unknown how long it had been, but Lin Zhuangxuan suddenly sat up suddenly, which made Su Weifeng break away from that wonderful feeling, but the taste still made him immersed in it, and his face showed an expression of great enjoyment. Su Weifeng. Lin Zhuangxuan suddenly glared at Su Weifeng and roared angrily. "Ah, Zhuangxuan, what's wrong with you?" Su Weifeng was stunned for a moment, looking at Lin Zhuangxuan in confusion. "What's wrong with me?" Lin Zhuangxuan's eyes widened even more, one hand clasped in front of his chest, and the other pointed at Su Weifeng, and said angrily, "You treat me like this? Are you still a human being? You still ask me what's wrong? What did I do to you?" Su Weifeng was even more confused. Lin Zhuangxuan stood up suddenly and said angrily, "You are still pretending to be confused. It's a pity that I trust you so much, and regard you as my family. I really didn't expect that you would take advantage of me sleeping. You. At this point, Lin Zhuangxuan raised his foot and kicked Su Weifeng's lower back hard. Su Weifeng had roughly guessed something from Lin Zhuangxuan's words. It should be that he was too involved at that time and completely ignored Lin Zhuangxuan on his leg, and then this hand might have been placed in a place where it shouldn't be. But before he could explain, Lin Zhuangxuan's kick had already come over, and Su Weifeng didn't dodge, but directly resisted, and his foot was hit. But for Su Weifeng, this was simply no different from tickling. But Lin Zhuangxuan couldn't do it. She kicked too hard, and the stone was uneven. Her feet slipped, and she lost her balance. She cried out, leaned back, and fell into the water. Su Weifeng quickly reached out and grabbed Lin Zhuangxuan's ankle. With a strong pull, Lin Zhuangxuan's body drew a perfect arc in the air, and then lay in Su Weifeng's arms again. "Ah, you, what are you doing? Let me go." Lin Zhuangxuan struggled hard. Su Weifeng was afraid that she would fall into the water, so he quickly grabbed her arm and said in one breath, "Zhuangxuan, I was practicing martial arts just now, and I was completely immersed in it, so I didn't know where my hand was. Maybe I touched a part that I shouldn't have touched, but I definitely didn't mean to do it. Do you think I will believe it?" Lin Zhuangxuan struggled with gritted teeth. "My dear aunt, if I really wanted to, would I let you go now? We have been alone together so many times. I would have attacked you a long time ago." "Humph, men often make mistakes on impulse. You were just not so impulsive before, but I just lay on your legs and stimulated you, turning you into a beast. And when I woke up, I clearly saw the intoxicated expression on your face. You still said you didn't know. Do you think I'm stupid? I still have an intoxicated expression." Su Weifeng thought for a while, and said with some laughter and tears, "I really entered a very wonderful state just now, so I have such an expression. Zhuangxuan, the fault must be mine, but I must clarify that I really didn't mean it. Let me go." Lin Zhuangxuan glared at Su Weifeng. "I will let you go, but you better be careful, and don't fall into the water." Su Weifeng reminded him, and then let go. Lin Zhuangxuan snorted, stood up directly, stood beside Su Weifeng, stared at Su Weifeng, and suddenly raised his foot, and kicked Su Weifeng again. "You do it again." Su Weifeng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He stretched out his arm, not to block Lin Zhuangxuan's foot, but to block Lin Zhuangxuan's side, to prevent her from falling into the water again. "Humph, whether you did it on purpose or not, you took advantage of me. You dared to touch my chest, you big bastard. No man has ever touched my chest. I'm saving it for my future husband. I'll let you take advantage of me. I'll kick you to death. I'll kick you to death." Su Weifeng actually felt an inexplicable excitement in his heart. For a man, maybe a girl's first kiss, first touch, etc., will always make him feel proud. "Oh, if you kick me again, I'll let you kick me to death." Su Weifeng was kicked a few times and screamed in pain. In fact, He also knew that Lin Xuanxuan's kicks were getting lighter and lighter, but he had to give Lin Xuanxuan a reason to stop. Lin Xuanxuan really stopped and said angrily, "You bastard, you are shameless and vulgar." Su Weifeng said with a bitter face, "Actually, I'm also wronged. You said I touched it, but I didn't feel anything at all, and I still had to be beaten and scolded. So what you mean? Do you still have to feel it?" Lin Xuanxuan lowered his head, his eyes full of danger. "No, no, how dare I?" "Then you just don't dare, not don't want to?" Lin Xuanxuan lowered his body even lower, gritting his teeth, as if he wanted to bite Su Weifeng to death. Su Weifeng leaned back a little. He said, "I dare not even think about it, but I have always regarded you as my sister." Lin Xuanxuan glared and said, "Ah, you are even more shameless. You actually laid a black hand on your own sister." Su Weifeng was speechless. Chapter 88, Mom gives you a chance to create. Lin Xuanxuan tortured Su Weifeng for a while, and finally vented her anger, so she let Su Weifeng go. In fact, Lin Xuanxuan was ashamed and angry when she first found out, but Su Weifeng's explanation, coupled with Su Weifeng's performance, she also knew that Su Weifeng definitely didn't mean it, but as a girl, after suffering such a big loss, she must express something, otherwise it would be too unrestrained. Why am I just angry? Because I'm not reserved enough? Shouldn't I be angry because I suffered a big loss? Lin Xuanxuan despised her own mentality and at the same time felt a little embarrassed. Could it be that she let Su Weifeng take advantage of her and didn't take it seriously? Oh, okay, I'm playing his girlfriend now. It's normal for a girlfriend to have some intimate contact with her boyfriend. Lin Xuanxuan quickly found another acceptable reason for herself. Su Weifeng didn't know that Lin Xuanxuan actually had so many thoughts in his mind, but he was relieved to see that Lin Xuanxuan finally let him go. This woman's advantage really can't be taken care of. It's getting dark. We have to go back. There are a lot of mosquitoes here at night. Su Weifeng waved his hand and drove away the mosquitoes surrounding Lin Xuanxuan. Lin Xuanxuan nodded and said, "Let's go." The two returned to the grandmother's house in the village. A group of young people were there. They dragged Su Weifeng to play cards for a while Lin Xuanxuan chatted with Shenji and other female relatives. It was past 10 o'clock and everyone was ready to rest. Then Su Weifeng and Lin Xuanxuan found a very serious and embarrassing problem. That is, the two of them were actually arranged in the same room, and there was only one bed in it. The two stood in the room, staring at each other for 10 seconds, and Su Weifeng hurriedly said, "I'll go change your room." Lin Xuanxuan quickly stretched out her hand to hold him, glared at him, and said, "Then do you want to tell others that I'm your fake girlfriend? What should I do? Can we still sleep in the same bed?" Su Weifeng grinned. Lin Xuanxuan blushed and said, "Of course not, you sleep on the floor." Su Weifeng's face darkened, but he still nodded and said, "You're right, I'll sleep on the floor." Oh my god, you take it seriously. Now it was Lin Xuanxuan's turn to have a dark face. Su Weifeng said nonchalantly, "What's the big deal? When I was in the army, I had to overcome all kinds of harsh conditions. When I was really sleepy, I would fall asleep on the floor, not to mention the floor. Even if it was in the water or mud, I would just lie down and sleep." Lin Xuanxuan rolled her eyes at Su Weifeng and said, "Don't give me that. We are not in the army anymore. If I'll let you sleep on the floor, if others see it, they will think I'm abusing you. How can I stay in this house in the future? No, my sister will have to be kicked out." Su Weifeng looked at the bed again and immediately whispered, "My mother is here." After Su Weifeng finished speaking, there was a knock on the door and his mother Shenji's voice came from the door. "Yushan, I boiled some water outside for you to wash your faces." Lin Xuanxuan hurried over to open the door and said with a smile, "Thank you, auntie." Shenji didn't come in either. He just said at the door, "This place is not like home. There is no place to take a shower. You have to boil hot water. Just wipe yourself in the room. If you don't have enough, ask Weifeng to boil it for you. It's getting late. You should go to bed early after you finish cleaning up. People in the countryside get up early and start making noise early. You can't sleep in." Shenji went out after he finished speaking. Su Weifeng immediately knew that his mother must have arranged for him and Lin Xuanxuan to live in the same room. His mother really thought a lot of things. Lin Zhuangxuan turned her head to look at Su Weifeng. Her face was already red. Seeing that Su Weifeng did not move, she came over and kicked him, saying, "Why don't you go get me some water?" Su Weifeng quickly agreed and went out to get some water. There were some people chatting in the yard. His mother immediately came over and whispered, "Son, mom can only help you here. The rest is up to you." Su Weifeng did not know whether to laugh or cry and said, "Mom, I know what to do." "What do you know?" Shenji glared at her and said, "You've been together for so long, but you haven't lived together yet. You're so stupid. You have to create opportunities for this woman. Do you expect her to go to your bed on her own initiative? Okay, I know what to do." Su Weifeng quickly got a basin of warm water and returned to the room dejectedly. Lin Zhuangxuan looked at Su Weifeng's face and said, "Why do you look like that?" Su Weifeng shook his head and said, "I can't go out now. Everyone is outside. If I go out, people will definitely think that there is something wrong between us. Then why are you still watching me wash?" Lin Zhuangxuan's eyes widened immediately. Su Weifeng immediately said, "I'll turn around, and I promise not to peek." Lin Zhuangxuan raised his chin and said, "Humph, I'm just washing my face and feet. Am I afraid that you'll peek? Oh, you don't need to take a shower. Nonsense. What should I use to wash? You can wipe it. Otherwise how can you sleep comfortably?" Lin Zhuangxuan suddenly came in front of Su Weifeng, squinted his eyes and said, "Do you want me to take off my clothes and wash everything?" Ahem. Su Weifeng sensed the danger and said, "I'm doing this for your own good. It must be uncomfortable to think about sweating before sleeping. Humph, you men are so mean." Lin Zhuangxuan gave Su Weifeng a disdainful look, then pushed Su Weifeng and said, "You better be honest. If you dare to peek, I'll fight you." Su Weifeng hurriedly said, "Absolutely not. If I peek, you'll dig my eyes out." There was a chair in the room, and Su Weifeng moved it directly to the wall. Facing the wall, he took out his mobile phone and started looking at it. Su Weifeng's ears were still very sharp. He could hear the sound of Lin Zhuangxuan taking off her clothes clearly. This was indeed a very strong temptation for him. Fortunately, Su Weifeng's willpower was still very strong. He forced himself to find the news to prevent himself from having wild thoughts. About 10 minutes later, Lin Zhuangxuan's voice sounded behind him. "I'm done washing." Su Weifeng turned his head and saw that Lin Zhuangxuan had changed into a small cotton floral pajamas. There was no makeup on her face, and her face was slightly red. She was quite beautiful and refined, which made Su Weifeng's eyes a little absent-minded. "Hey, are you stupid?" Lin Zhuangxuan poked Su Weifeng, but there was a smug look in her eyes, and it was obvious that she was very satisfied with Su Weifeng's absent-mindedness. Su Weifeng was a little embarrassed, coughed lightly, and said, "I'll go wash too." He quickly slipped out. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 89. You're Not Dead Yet? Su Weifeng changed a basin of water and went back to the room to wash. However, it was much easier for a man to wash. He left his shorts on and washed with his bare chest. He quickly scrubbed and was about to put on his shirt when Lin Zhuangxuan suddenly turned around with a look of horror in his eyes. "Why do you have so many scars?" Lin Zhuangxuan pointed at Su Weifeng's chest and whispered. Su Weifeng put on his clothes and said with a smile, "It's normal for a soldier to have some scars on his body." Lin Zhuangxuan jumped over and pulled up Su Weifeng's coat directly. Looking at Su Weifeng's chest, he said, "You have a few? They are all over your body." Su Weifeng smiled faintly and said, "This is a man's pride." "What kind of pride?" "My god, it looks like you have been cut by a sharp weapon. You have been stabbed hundreds of times? How can you survive?" Su Weifeng was really at a loss for words and said, "I'm still standing here. It seems like I'm not dead." Lin Zhuangxuan was actually a little excited at this time and said, "Oh my god, this is definitely a story. This is definitely an earth-shattering story, and you have never told me about it once." Su Weifeng rolled his eyes and said, "Oh my god, I thought you were feeling sorry for me and sympathizing with me, but it turns out that you have discovered a creative theme. Didn't you say it? You are standing here, so there is nothing wrong, but the story inside is so worth exploring. I even feel that your story may be more exciting than Wolf Warrior. Inhuman guy." Su Weifeng glared at Lin Zhuangxuan unhappily, then walked out with the basin of water. When Su Weifeng came back again, Lin Zhuangxuan directly grabbed Su Weifeng's arm and walked towards the bed. "What are you doing?" Su Weifeng was startled. Lin Zhuangxuan's performance. Why does she look so hungry? Until he was pulled by Lin Zhuangxuan to sit on the bed. Su Weifeng hurriedly stopped him and said, "Zhuangxuan, what are you doing?" Lin Zhuangxuan grinned and said, "I'm waiting for you to tell me a story. Scare me." Su Weifeng rolled his eyes at Lin Zhuangxuan. "Scare you?" Lin Zhuangxuan was stunned for a moment, then spat at Su Weifeng and said angrily, "Sure enough, dirty people have dirty ideas." Su Weifeng grinned. It seemed that he couldn't refute this. "Okay, I know you won't bully me. If I don't believe you, can I just pretend to be my sister? At least I have to show it to my aunt. Let's not sleep tonight. You tell me stories all night." Su Weifeng smiled bitterly and said, "Zhuangxuan, it's not that I don't want to tell you, but I can't tell you." Lin Zhuangxuan frowned immediately and said, "Why?" "Because many of the things I do involve national secrets. They are all top secret, and they must not be passed on." "Oh my god, so powerful." Lin Zhuangxuan's eyes brightened. Su Weifeng looked at Lin Zhuangxuan's eyes rolling around and said, "So this is something I can't tell you. Don't make any plans, and even if you know it, it is absolutely impossible to create art with these." "Oh, I understand." Lin Zhuangxuan pouted, looking very unhappy. Su Weifeng smiled slightly and said, "Okay, go to sleep well." Lin Zhuangxuan snorted, turned to get on the bed, and lay down with her back to Su Weifeng. Su Weifeng shook his head, but for a moment, he really didn't know what to do next. Should he lie on the bed too? Bang! With a light sound, Lin Zhuangxuan raised her hand and turned off the lights in the room, and the room suddenly fell into darkness. The room instantly fell into a strange silence. "Hey, what are you doing sitting there like an idiot?" After about 10 minutes, Lin Zhuangxuan finally broke the silence. "I can sleep while sitting," Su Weifeng answered casually. Lin Zhuangxuan turned over. His eyes had adapted to the darkness in the room. In fact, there was still light outside, and through the curtains, it would not make the room very dark. Looking at Su Weifeng sitting obediently on the bed, he said, "You'd better go to bed and sleep, otherwise it will really seem like I'm bullying you." Su Weifeng hesitated for a moment, and also fell on the bed, but he was right next to the bed, and the distance between him and Lin Zhuangxuan was enough for another person to lie down. Lin Zhuangxuan burst out laughing and said, "Are you afraid that I will molest you? Don't fall to the ground." Su Weifeng also chuckled and said, "It's okay. I will never fall. Okay, move in a little bit. I'm not afraid." "Why are you so afraid?" "Really?" Lin Zhuangxuan reached out and pulled Su Weifeng. Lin Zhuangxuan was already like this. Su Weifeng felt that it would be hypocritical if he insisted. He moved in a little bit. At least he could lie flat on the bed, but there was still a distance between him and Lin Zhuangxuan. The two fell into silence again. After about 10 minutes, Lin Zhuangxuan whispered again, "Are you asleep?" Su Weifeng didn't say anything. He wanted to pretend to be asleep, so that Lin Zhuangxuan could sleep peacefully. Lin Zhuangxuan kicked Su Weifeng and said softly, "Don't pretend. I know you are not asleep. Tell me a story. Tell me something you can tell, but it must be unique, otherwise I can't sleep." Su Weifeng said helplessly, "People here get up at dawn. It's only 5 o'clock. We have to get up by then. You should go to bed early." "No, just tell me one, and I will go to sleep after you tell me one, okay?" Lin Zhuangxuan grabbed Su Weifeng's arm and shook it gently twice. Okay, I'll tell it." Su Weifeng really had no resistance to Lin Zhuangxuan's coquetry. "I know you are the best." Lin Zhuangxuan cheered, and her body bounced, and she had already moved to Su Weifeng's side, raised her head sideways, and said, "Tell it, tell it." Lin Zhuangxuan suddenly got closer to him, but Su Weifeng didn't have any messy thoughts in his mind. Instead, he felt very kind. Lin Xuanxuan looked more like a lovely sister. Let me tell you a story about when I first joined the special forces. It was my first mission. During the mission, we encountered a surprise attack and several of our team members were injured, but the other side also paid a heavier price. We killed 13 people and captured a prisoner. But I didn't expect that the prisoner was a woman, and she was very beautiful. Her leg was shot. Chapter 90 fell asleep. Ah, it's a woman, and a beautiful one at that. Then you. Lin Xuanxuan blinked her big eyes and asked curiously. When we were on a mission, there were only enemies and our own people, and there was no distinction between men and women. That woman can only be regarded as a prisoner now. We simply treated her wounds and wanted to get the information we wanted from her, but that woman didn't reveal any information except scolding us. Lin Xuanxuan asked curiously again, then will you force a confession? Of course, but we definitely don't use the kind of torture methods. We can only use intimidation and the like, but these are useless. I was also surprised to see such a tough woman. I was a new recruit in that team, so I was responsible for carrying this female prisoner. Isn't this a blessing? Lin Xuanxuan pouted. Su Weifeng shook his head gently and said, this is not a good fortune at all. Do you really think that a female prisoner with a leg injury is not dangerous? Her weapons were searched away, but she actually touched a sharp stone without anyone noticing. I almost cut her throat. Oh my god, so cruel. Lin Xuanxuan was also shocked and subconsciously looked at Su Weifeng's neck. Luckily, I reacted quickly enough, so I didn't fall for her trick. Then, we were ambushed several more times. Although there were no major losses, it was still extremely dangerous. Then we finally arrived at the final destination. The battle was very fierce. 5 of our team members died. We don't know how many people on the other side died. In the end, we finally completed the mission. Where is the female prisoner? We completed the mission and released her, but I will never forget the hateful look she showed us at that time, especially towards me. She hated me so much that she wanted to tear me into pieces. Didn't you carry her on your back all the time? Why does she still hate you so much? Our positions are different. In her eyes, we are enemies, and we killed her comrades, her friends, and her relatives. Oh, that's true. When you think about it this way, she is also very pitiful. Yes, I have carried out many missions later, but this first mission really left a deep impression on me. Have you seen that woman again since then? No. If you see her again in the future, will she want to kill you? I think so. After all, I'm her enemy. But we were all wearing makeup at that time. Even if she saw me, I'm afraid she would not be able to recognize me. Is that so? That's better. I always feel that if a woman takes revenge crazily, it is a terrible thing. Su Weifeng chuckled and said, actually, it's nothing. The possibility of meeting again is almost zero. Then did you kill anyone? Lin Xuanxuan asked again. What do you think? You killed 2? Lin Xuanxuan's mouth twitched. Su Weifeng looked at Lin Xuanxuan, deliberately put on a stern face, showing a ferocious look, and said in a rough voice, yes, in so many years, I don't know how many people I have killed. Ah. Lin Xuanxuan cried out, subconsciously shrank back, and a look of fear appeared on her face. But soon Lin Xuanxuan stretched out her hand to pinch Su Weifeng, kicked him twice with her little feet, and said angrily, you big bad guy, you scared me. I'm not scaring you, I'm telling the truth. Su Weifeng shook his head gently. Lin Xuanxuan pouted and said, you also said that you were on a mission, so killing the enemy is normal. You're not a bad guy who kills people casually. I'm not afraid of you. Then Lin Xuanxuan blinked and said, then what was it like the first time you killed someone? Su Weifeng suddenly widened his eyes and looked at Lin Xuanxuan as if he were a monster and said, you'd better not know this, okay? I have to know. If I'm filming something like war or special forces in the future, I will always have to face this problem. I have to make the actors understand the feeling of killing an enemy every time. Only in this way can I truly reflect human nature and be more realistic. Su Weifeng gave him a thumbs up and said, you are really dedicated, but this is not a good feeling. To be honest, I fired a lot of shots at that time, and I didn't know if my bullets hit the enemy. It was only when I was cleaning the battlefield afterwards and saw the enemy's bodies that I had that feeling. What was it like? Lin Xuanxuan asked nervously. Su Weifeng sighed and said, my stomach feels uncomfortable, and I want to vomit. It feels a bit like motion sickness. Is it that simple? Lin Zhuangxuan was a little unconvinced. Yes, after all, I have received professional training. In addition, my comrades were injured at that time, and I was full of anger, so the feeling was not very strong. Lin Zhuangxuan thought about it seriously and said, is that so? It seems that different situations and different people should have different reactions to such situations. That's for sure. Su Weifeng shook his head and said, okay, let's go to bed. It feels a bit depressing to tell such a story before going to bed. Lin Zhuangxuan stuck out his tongue and said, who asked you to tell such a bloody story? Okay, it's my fault. Go to sleep. After saying that, Su Weifeng closed his eyes. Lin Zhuangxuan did not disturb Su Weifeng this time. She still needed to digest the story Su Weifeng told. She wanted to analyze human nature, and at the same time, she was thinking about how to integrate such a story into her own story in the future. Although there was a beautiful woman beside him, Su Weifeng was still able to fall asleep quickly. It was not that Lin Zhuangxuan was not attractive, but he forced himself to focus his attention elsewhere. The feeling by the stream today was more attractive to Su Weifeng. Healing his injuries was what Su Weifeng wanted to do most when he returned to the city. However, he couldn't find it when he wanted to take the initiative to enter that feeling, and it made him quite tired, and he fell asleep unconsciously. After more than 20 minutes, Lin Zhuangxuan suddenly heard a slight sound of sniping, turned his head to look at Su Weifeng, and found that he was actually asleep. He was stunned for a moment, then the corners of his mouth slightly curled up, revealing a sweet smile. He could fall asleep directly when he was lying next to him. Such a man was really reassuring. Cousin Qiao Yushan really found a very good man, and this man had so many stories. It was definitely hard to find a lantern. No matter what, she couldn't let this man run away from her cousin's hands. Chapter 91 confirmed. The next morning, at around 5 o'clock, some people had already gotten up, just as the sky was getting light. The birthday party was held in the courtyard of the house, and the chef had already started working in the courtyard early in the morning. Su Weifeng woke up immediately after hearing the noise, and then felt his arms go numb. He turned around, and saw Lin Zhuangxuan curled up beside him, with her head resting on his arm, one arm pressed on his chest, and her legs wrapped around his legs. This scene seemed a bit erotic, but Su Weifeng felt very warm. He gently patted Lin Zhuangxuan's shoulder and whispered, Zhuangxuan, it's time to get up. Everyone will get up soon. Oh. Lin Zhuangxuan murmured vaguely, but didn't open his eyes at all. Instead, he squeezed into Su Weifeng's arms again, and squeezed his arms and legs hard. He must be treating him like a big doll. Su Weifeng had no choice but to turn around and said in her ear, how about this, you sleep for another 20 minutes, and I'll get up first. Oh. Lin Zhuangxuan responded vaguely again, but soon opened her eyes and said, it's dawn. Subconsciously, she still knew that she had to get up at dawn. Su Weifeng smiled and said, yeah, you take a nap. I'll get up first and call you later. No, I have to get up too. Lin Zhuangxuan said quickly, and then suddenly let out a low cry and sat up quickly, her face flushed red. She glanced at Su Weifeng and suddenly kicked him, saying, you bad guy, what did you do last night? I was fine before going to bed. How could I let you hug me? Su Weifeng couldn't help but smile. This was clearly a counterattack. He sat up and said, I didn't sleep well. I'm sorry. I'll get up first and get you some water to wash your face. Lin Zhuangxuan saw Su Weifeng go out and stroked her face with her hand. Her face was hot. Oh my god, this is so embarrassing. I actually slept with him in my arms. When Su Weifeng came back with the water, Lin Zhuangxuan had already changed into normal clothes, and her complexion had returned to normal. Then she washed her face and started to put on makeup. Today was an important occasion, and she had to dress more beautifully. The two of them did not mention the sleeping position at night, which seemed less awkward. After packing up, the two of them left the room together. There were already a lot of people outside, and most of the relatives at home had gotten up, except for some children who were still sleeping. Shenji came over directly took Lin Zhuangxuan's hand, looked her up and down, and said with a smile, "Yushan, you didn't sleep well yesterday. There is no air conditioning in the countryside, and the bed is definitely not as comfortable as the one in your home." Lin Zhuangxuan's face couldn't help but blush, and said, "It's very cool at night, better than air conditioning, and I'm not that delicate." Seeing Lin Zhuangxuan's red face, Shenji was very happy, holding Lin Zhuangxuan's hand, and said, "Yeah, when we get back, I will replace Wei Feng's bed with a bigger one, and buy a good mattress. By the way, I will also replace your air conditioner with a better one, so that you will be comfortable." Su Weifeng's face was so black when he heard it, and Lin Zhuangxuan's face was so red that blood was about to drip out. This was simply too obvious. How could she not hear it? For a moment, she was at a loss and didn't know how to answer, and her head was about to drop to her chest. "Yushan, let's go over there and take a look." Su Weifeng hurriedly took Lin Zhuangxuan away, otherwise his mother didn't know what else to say. "I'm sorry, my mother is eager for me to get married soon and give her a grandson soon. I can understand that." Lin Zhuangxuan replied in a low voice with a red face. Su Weifeng said again, "You don't have to take it to heart. She is just this kind of person who thinks one thing at a time. After the incident, she will forget it in 2 days." "Yeah." Lin Zhuangxuan nodded again. Soon, the whole Su family became lively. When there is a wedding in the countryside, almost everyone in the village will be there. Su Weifeng and his family are naturally responsible for entertaining the guests. They are all very busy. When it comes to the birthday celebration, the atmosphere is brought to a climax. The younger generations present gifts one after another. Su Weifeng and Lin Zhuangxuan directly gave Grandma a Heshan jade deer pendant, which symbolizes longevity. Although this is not as valuable as Grandma's jade necklace, it is also worth about 100,000. It's just that everyone doesn't know the value of it, and Su Weifeng doesn't want to show off anything. It's just his heart. It was more than 3 o'clock in the afternoon when the birthday banquet ended, and Su Weifeng's family also said goodbye to everyone. Grandma held Qiao Yushan's hand and said reluctantly, "Second grandson's wife. In the Su family, Suzuki Yang is the eldest, and Su Weifeng is the second. At least in Grandma's eyes, Su Weifeng is the second grandson. If you have time in the future, come here to see the old lady." Lin Zhuangxuan hurriedly said, "Grandma, I will come here often. Grandma is waiting for you and Weifeng to get married as soon as possible, and then give me a great grandson." I don't know how many people have mentioned this topic today. Lin Zhuangxuan was embarrassed at the beginning, but now she has become accustomed to it. She smiled and said, "Grandma, we won't be here for too long. You have to come to the wedding wine when the time comes." Grandma laughed happily and said, "Haha, as long as I can still move, I will definitely go. Our old Su family can marry such a good daughter-in-law, which is definitely a great honor for our ancestors." Even if they were reluctant, everyone still had to leave. Su Qianguo had to go back to study, and Qiao Yushan, who Lin Zhuangxuan pretended to be, was also a busy person and could not stay here for too long. With everyone's farewell, Su Weifeng and his family finally drove away. "I'm so proud this time. This is the first time I am so proud in your family." In the car, Mother Shenji began to float. Su Qianguo snorted and said, "That was brought to you by Yushan. Why are you so proud?" Shenji immediately said, "Yushan is my daughter-in-law. Her honor is also my honor." "Yushan, don't you think so?" Qiao Yushan hurriedly said, "Yes, I must save face for my aunt." Shenji was even more proud and said, "Look, Yushan said so. You old man, don't ruin the atmosphere here." After 2 days of getting along, Lin Zhuangxuan has almost integrated into this family. At this time, he is completely relaxed. He sings and laughs all the way. He is not lonely at all. The 4-hour drive went back without him noticing. After sending his parents home first, Su Weifeng went to send Lin Zhuangxuan home. In the car, he frowned and said, "Zhuangxuan, there seems to be something wrong with this matter. What's the problem?" Lin Zhuangxuan was still immersed in happiness and asked nonchalantly, "You slept in the same room with me this time. My mother will definitely treat Yushan in this way in the future. So we must talk to Yushan first, right?" "Ah!" Lin Zhuangxuan exclaimed, and his face suddenly became a little ugly. Chapter 92. Confession. Please collect and update. Then what should I do? What should I do? Lin Zhuangxuan panicked and stammered. If my sister knew that you and I slept in the same bed, she would be angry and she would think that something happened between us. It's over. It's over. I can't wash myself clean, even if I jump into the yellow river. Su Weifeng stretched out his right hand, patted Lin Zhuangxuan's leg, and said, don't panic. Just tell you about this directly. How can she not trust you as her sister? Lin Zhuangxuan grabbed Su Weifeng's hand directly, frowned and said, but we slept in the same bed. Won't she be suspicious? Su Weifeng said, your sister is such a rational person, not the kind of person who likes to fantasize. She can naturally tell the difference between right and wrong. This seems to be the case. My sister is indeed not the kind of person who makes random guesses, but this is not something else. I'm really afraid that she will think too much, then there will be problems in the relationship between our sisters. I don't want my sister to doubt me, or even hate me. Su Weifeng smiled slightly. He and Qiao Yushan were fake. Not to mention that he and Lin Zhuangxuan were fake. Even if they were real, Qiao Yushan didn't need to be jealous. At most, they would just reveal their true colors. You can still laugh. I was so scared. Lin Zhuangxuan glared at Su Weifeng unhappily. Su Weifeng said, it's okay. We are open and above board. Unless you have something to hide, you are afraid of suspicion. Yes, I pretended to be her openly. I did it for her. No matter how much I paid, I slept with you for her. PFFT. Can you ignore the last sentence? Su Weifeng was speechless. Oh, right. We didn't sleep together. We just slept in the same bed under special circumstances. In fact, nothing happened between us. I didn't sleep in your arms or hug you to sleep. Remove the last two sentences. Su Weifeng was tired. Lin Zhuangxuan looked at Su Weifeng with a bitter face. Su Weifeng squeezed her hand again and said softly, remember, everything you are doing now is because you are pretending to be Qiao Yushan. Everything you do is for Qiao Yushan. This is not your original intention, but for the relationship between her and me. Yes. Lin Zhuangxuan slapped her thigh vigorously, then raised her chin and said, I did it for her. I saw that she was progressing so slowly with you, and I was always worried about her, so I promoted it. Su Weifeng was startled, turned his head, and looked at Lin Zhuangxuan's beaming face, and couldn't help laughing. Lin Zhuangxuan was so panicked just now, but in the blink of an eye, she found a reason, and came alive all of a sudden. Okay, then let's go find your sister. You call your sister. Okay. Lin Zhuangxuan was not vague at this time, and called Qiao Yushan directly. Qiao Yushan was at home. More than 10 minutes later, Su Weifeng and Lin Zhuangxuan came to Qiao Yushan's house together. As soon as she entered the house, Lin Zhuangxuan yelled, sister, you really screwed me over. I was exhausted these past 2 days. Then she sat down on the sofa. Qiao Yushan and Su Weifeng exchanged glances, and Su Weifeng smiled back, indicating that nothing was wrong. Qiao Yushan then went over and sat next to Lin Zhuangxuan, handed her an apple, and said, thank you for your hard work. I'll buy you anything you like. Lin Zhuangxuan took the apple and took a bite, saying, you think buying some things is enough? This time I suffered heavy losses and even lost my reputation. Reputation? Qiao Yushan frowned and looked at Su Weifeng again with suspicion, while Su Weifeng spread his hands. Lin Zhuangxuan deliberately said in a wronged tone, it's not about reputation. At my brother-in-law's house, everyone thinks you've slept together, so they directly arranged us in the same room with the same bed. If this gets leaked in the future, won't my reputation be ruined? The more Lin Zhuangxuan chattered, the more Qiao Yushan knew that it was okay. She said unhappily, others won't know it was you. What are you afraid of? Lin Zhuangxuan's eyes widened immediately and said, oh my god, sister, don't you suspect that something happened between me and my brother-in-law? We slept in the same bed, didn't we? Qiao Yushan said unhappily, who is your brother-in-law? I don't even know who he is. What can he do to you? Lin Zhuangxuan was so aggrieved that she was about to cry, and said, sister, you are so inhuman. I, your sister, have paid so much, and you have such an attitude? Qiao Yushan glared at her and said, I know. You have paid a lot. Didn't I say I bought you something? It's so boring. I wanted to scare you, but you didn't cooperate. Brother-in-law, you squatted on the chair all night for nothing. Lin Zhuangxuan had a sympathetic expression. The two of them hadn't mentioned this beforehand, and Lin Zhuangxuan's improvisation was really amazing. Qiao Yushan had to pretend to be Su Weifeng's real boyfriend at this time, and she had to give a distressed expression and said, "You've worked so hard." Su Weifeng smiled slightly and said, "It's okay." Lin Zhuangxuan nudged Qiao Yushan with his shoulder and said with a smile, "But I have to remind you, now Auntie has determined that you have lived together. Today, she said that she wants to change the bed, mattress, and air conditioner at home." Qiao Yushan's face suddenly changed. She finally knew what the consequences of this incident would be. She turned to look at Su Weifeng, and her brows also frowned. Lin Zhuangxuan blinked and said ambiguously, Hey, sister, what's with that expression? What's going on? You have known each other for so long, and your brother-in-law is pretty good. Just do what needs to be done. Do you have to wait until the wedding day to go to bed?" Qiao Yushan was even more embarrassed and said unhappily, "This is our own business, don't worry about it." "What do you mean by worrying? Second aunt and second uncle have been asking me to keep an eye on you too, and I have to report to my second aunt all the time." Qiao Yushan's mouth twitched, and then she glanced at Su Weifeng and said, "You little traitor, I've been so nice to you in vain." She was also secretly having a headache. Originally, she and Su Weifeng were using each other well, but now it feels like more and more people are getting involved, and they are getting more and more out of control. 93 We are friends. Lin Zhuangxuan chattered about everything that happened at Su Weifeng's house. The most important thing was Su Weifeng's family's current attitude towards this future daughter-in-law and the future direction, as well as Chenlan, a relative. Oh, Chenlan is actually a relative. Qiao Yushan was a little surprised. Su Weifeng said, "You don't have to take special care of her. Just do what you want." Qiao Yushan said, "Chenlan's ability is still good. If there is a chance, it's not a big deal to mention her. After all, we are relatives. If I don't take care of her, it will make me seem too unkind, and it will also make my aunt look bad in the future." Although Qiao Yushan and Shenji had only met once, they still chatted a lot on WeChat. In addition, with Su Weifeng's reminder, she also had some understanding of Shenji. In front of Lin Zhuangxuan, she always had to consider the issue as Su Weifeng's girlfriend. Lin Zhuangxuan smiled, stood up and said, "Okay, I have explained everything I should explain. The rest has nothing to do with me. How you want to solve it is your business. I will not disturb your world of two people." Lin Zhuangxuan left as soon as he said he would. Before leaving, he cast an ambiguous look at the two of them. Qiao Yushan and Su Weifeng were left in the room. Su Weifeng said helplessly, "My mother is mainly responsible for this matter. She deliberately caused this situation. At this time, my mother was used to take the blame." Qiao Yushan sat down and said, "It's not her fault. I can understand a mother's thoughts." Su Weifeng also sat down and said seriously, "But this matter is still quite troublesome. I feel that, if it goes on like this, it will be a bit difficult to get rid of it. It will only make us more and more troublesome in the future." This is indeed the case. Qiao Yushan frowned. "Then how about we find an excuse to break up?" Su Weifeng asked tentatively. Qiao Yushan immediately shook her head and said, "No, if we break up, let alone the criticism from the two elders, then there will definitely be constant urging for blind dates and the like, which is still the same trouble." Su Weifeng coughed lightly and said, "Other things are easy to say, but if you come to my house again, this is also a problem that makes Qiao Yushan headache." He said, "This is indeed." He stroked his forehead with a helpless look. The two looked at each other, and they were at a loss for a while. After a while, Qiao Yushan said, "I think it's better to do this. When you go to your house in the future and your mother asks me to stay, you can say that it's inconvenient to stay at home, and then we can stay outside, or come to my house and stay. At that time, you can stay in a hotel and I will reimburse you. This is a good idea, but forget about reimbursement. We are helping each other." Su Weifeng nodded in agreement. "There is another thing. My father's birthday is next month, and I have to trouble you to go back with me." "No problem." Su Weifeng answered very happily. After talking about the things between them, Qiao Yushan said again, "Thank you so much for the loan this time. Then she took out a bank card, handed it to Su Weifeng, and said, "Here is 500,000. 500,000? What for?" Su Weifeng asked puzzledly. "You've helped the company so much, this is a commission deduction for you. Normally speaking, 500,000 is too little, but since you're not paying it to the bank, it's not easy for me to transfer the money, so I can only give you this much. I hope you can understand." Su Weifeng waved his hand and said, "I won't take this kind of money. We are mutually beneficial, so I also regard you as my friend, and it's natural for me to help you. If I take your money, it means I don't regard you as a friend." "Friend?" Qiao Yushan smiled and said, "Relatives are relatives and money is money, and friends should be clear about the differences. So you still have to take the money you deserve, otherwise I won't be able to ask you for help in the future." Su Weifeng said seriously, "Yushan, besides the reason of friendship, I also don't like this way of making a profit. To put it bluntly, this is a kind of rent seeking by using power. If I take this money, I will feel uncomfortable. If you insist on giving it to me, then I really can't help you in the future." Qiao Yushan looked at Su Weifeng in astonishment for more than 10 seconds, then took back the bank card and said apologetically, "I'm sorry, I solved the problem with inertial thinking, and I will never do it next time, but I have to say that you really made me look at you with adversity. There are not many people who can insist on self-discipline and not be moved by money." Su Weifeng grinned and said, "There is no way. I'm used to being in the army." Qiao Yushan shook her head helplessly and said, "It would be great if everyone in the world was as ethical as you." Then he smiled again and said, "Originally I just regarded you as a hired person, but now I really feel that you are a very good friend. I feel that our cooperation should be more and more pleasant." Su Weifeng stretched out his hand and said, "Happy cooperation." The two shook hands and smiled at each other. When Su Weifeng returned home, his mother immediately pulled Su Weifeng over and said, "Son, do you have to thank your mother this time?" Su Qianguo said unhappily, "How could you instigate my son like this? Go and harm other people's girls." Shenji glared at him and said, "What nonsense are you talking about? What do you mean by harming other people's girls? This is dating. Do you understand? Young people nowadays are dating, so they should live together. This can increase their feelings. Besides, living together can better know whether they are compatible or not." Su Qianguo's face turned black and said, "What nonsense are you talking about? You have the nerve to say that in front of my son. I'm talking about whether our living habits are compatible or not. What are you thinking?" "Oh." Su Qianguo was embarrassed this time. Su Weifeng didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and hurriedly said, "Dad, Mom, stop arguing. I know what to do." Shenji patted Su Weifeng on the head and said, "You know nothing. If it wasn't for me, your mother, how could you have won so quickly? Yes, your mother is mighty and domineering." Su Weifeng hurriedly flattered his mother. Su Qianguo shook his head and said, "You taught your son badly." "How is my son bad? Now my son is so outstanding. You old man are stubborn. Fortunately, my son is not like you. Otherwise, not to mention that he couldn't find a girlfriend as outstanding as Yushan, he couldn't even find an ordinary one." Yes, I'm stubborn. Then why did you marry me? I was blind at that time. Humph. If it were now, I would not marry you." Su Weifeng hurriedly slipped back to the room. Although his parents always joked with each other, he knew very well that the relationship between his parents was very good, and they would not be really angry. Cute. On Monday, when Su Weifeng came to the company, Lin Zhuangxuan ran to his office first, sat opposite him, squinted her eyes and asked, "Left, what did my sister say? You didn't ask her yourself?" Su Weifeng asked back with a smile. "If I ask her myself, won't it make me look guilty?" Lin Zhuangxuan rolled her eyes at Su Weifeng. Su Weifeng chuckled and said, "Nothing, just studying what to do with this matter in the future." "What to do? I also asked how to solve this matter in the future. Do I have to sleep in the same bed with you every time I go to your house?" "Oh, she admits it, but she can't let me pretend anymore. Your sister's idea is to go to my house for dinner together in the future, but as for accommodation, go back to her house, or go out to get a room. PFFT, it turns out that you have been. Humph, you are still pretending to be innocent in front of me." Lin Zhuangxuan curled her lips with disdain. Su Weifeng didn't explain, just smiled and said nothing. Lin Zhuangxuan touched her chin and then immediately said with a beaming face, "But this is not bad. I can still go to Auntie's meal in the future, and then I can use this excuse to run away. What you said seems to make sense." Su Weifeng couldn't help but smile. I finally found a place where I can eat and drink well. I can't let it go easily. Do you think it's good to eat taquio every day? By the way, what else did you say? Then her mother's birthday is next month. We have to go back. It's my second aunt's birthday, so I'll go with her. It seems that I have never celebrated my second aunt's birthday. Then let's go together. Su Weifeng replied with a smile. Okay, it's settled. After chatting for a few words, Lin Zhuangxuan went out. From today, the company officially started shooting short videos. Lin Zhuangxuan is a part-time director, and she has to do everything herself. She became busy all of a sudden. Su Weifeng called Sun Yumeng over. Sitting opposite Su Weifeng's desk, Sun Yumeng seemed very nervous and looked at Su Weifeng nervously. Su Weifeng said directly, "Boss Lin and I have read your book, and I feel that it still has some highlights." Sun Yumeng's eyes lit up immediately. Su Weifeng changed the subject and said, "However, there are still some shortcomings in some places, and you need to further revise them. I have added explanations for the specific places in the document. You can study them when you go back." "Thank you, Boss Su." "Thank you, Boss Su." Sun Yumeng stood up excitedly and bowed to Su Weifeng repeatedly. Su Weifeng smiled slightly and said, "The company still needs motivated employees. You are a girl with ideas and hard work. Boss Lin and I have seen this. I hope you will work harder in the future, and the company will definitely give you better opportunities." Yes, I will definitely work hard. I will go back and revise it immediately," Sun Yumeng said and turned around suddenly. Bang! The chair fell to the ground. Sun Yumeng hurriedly lifted up the chair, looked at Su Weifeng nervously, and stammered, "Boss Su, Su Weifeng waved his hand and said, "It's okay, don't be so anxious next time." Yes. Seeing that Su Weifeng was not angry, Sun Yumeng stuck out her tongue and walked out carefully. Su Weifeng watched Sun Yumeng turn around the door in the room and immediately heard a suppressed yeah, followed by the sound of cheerful running all the way. This made Su Weifeng smile. This Sun Yumeng has always given him a very pure impression. I didn't expect that this girl also has a potential for being cute. Su Weifeng now has another important job, which is to contact major online short video platforms, contact those short video platforms that have become popular, and then discuss future cooperation. This matter really made Su Weifeng a little overwhelmed. It's not just a matter of bargaining. Now their company is still a new company, so in addition to questioning, the other party also despises their company. Sometimes what they say is really not pleasant to hear. This made Su Weifeng very unhappy, but now he could only be patient in dealing with these people. At noon, he had lunch with Lin Zhuangxuan. The two ordered a portion of braised pork and a portion of vegetables. Lin Zhuangxuan first picked up a piece of meat, took a small bite, chewed it twice, and immediately praised, "Not bad, not bad. Today's meat is really delicious. You come and try it." Then he directly put the remaining half to Su Weifeng's mouth. Su Weifeng also opened his mouth and ate it, and nodded and said, "It's really good. You can order more from this restaurant in the future." Then he suddenly found that Lin Zhuangxuan suddenly stopped moving, looked up at her, and said, "What's wrong with you?" "Nothing." Lin Zhuangxuan lowered her head to pick up the vegetables again, but her eyes seemed to be avoiding Su Weifeng. Su Weifeng didn't care and said, "I received an invitation today. There is an event in the provincial capital on Wednesday. It is organized by a video platform. I think it is necessary for our company to participate, and maybe we can get some resources." Lin Zhuangxuan raised his head and said, "We must participate in this event. We are too short of resources now. We must connect the resources of major video platforms. Otherwise, the videos we shoot will not have enough resources to promote, and it will be difficult to produce results." Su Weifeng nodded and said, "Then I'll go." Lin Zhuangxuan thought for a while and said, "Then I'll go with you. This matter is the most important for the time being." Su Weifeng said, "That's fine. After all, I'm still an outsider." I won't be very confident if I go. Su Weifeng never thought that he could do everything. Every profession has its specialties. At least in this industry, he is just a beginner. There are many things he needs to learn. Lin Zhuangxuan said again. As for the specific schedule, I can also arrange it on my side. Su Weifeng said, they have arrangements on Wednesday night and activities on Thursday morning, so we will get there on Wednesday afternoon. Okay, no problem. By the way, if you want to go out with me, do you want to report to my sister? No need for that. I'll just say I have something to go out for. Well, for the time being, let's not tell her about our company. Actually, it may be more convenient sometimes. Otherwise, when we are together, if she finds out, we will have to explain. If I say yes or no, then I won't tell her. Lin Zhuangxuan raised her chin, but there was a strange light in her eyes. Mom's speed. Invite Yushan to your home for dinner tonight. In the afternoon, Shenji sent a message to Su Weifeng. You don't have to look for her every day, do you? Su Weifeng was a little overwhelmed. Today was only Monday, and at least in name, Shenji was still with Qiao Yushan on Sunday. If I ask you to look for her, I'll look for her. If you don't, I'll look for her myself. Okay, I'll look for her, but if she doesn't have time, forget it. What do you mean you don't have time? You still have to eat. Even if you don't have time, don't make all kinds of excuses. Su Weifeng had no choice but to send a message to Qiao Yushan. After a long time, Qiao Yushan replied, okay, I'll be there around 7. Su Weifeng told his mother, and his mother immediately said proudly, huh, you see, Yushan doesn't want to come, but you don't take the initiative. You are a grown man, but you don't even understand this. Su Weifeng was also very busy in the afternoon. When he got home, it was almost 7 o'clock, and he happened to meet Qiao Yushan at the gate of the community. What a coincidence. Su Weifeng greeted her with a smile. You're back so late too. Qiao Yushan also smiled slightly. There are a lot of things to do today. Qiao Yushan said, by the way, what are you doing now? You haven't told me yet. If auntie asks, I don't know how to answer. Su Weifeng obviously felt that Qiao Yushan was now more serious about impersonation than before, and said, I just partnered with someone to set up a small company. I'm considered a shareholder. It's just the beginning. What industry? Is there anything I can help with? Su Weifeng said, entertainment industry, making those short videos and the like. I can't help with this, I don't understand it, but Zhuangxuan also started a similar company, I don't know how it's going. Su Weifeng said, Zhuangxuan is also doing this, then I have to ask her for advice later. Qiao Yushan frowned and said, forget it, she is just fooling around all day long, and she does whatever she wants. She is not as cautious as you. If you listen to her ideas, your company will get into trouble. Su Weifeng understood some of the reasons from Qiao Yushan's words. Qiao Yushan didn't look down on this industry, but she was worried about Lin Zhuangxuan's work. Su Weifeng said, I don't think Zhuangxuan is the kind of person who makes trouble. Qiao Yushan said, don't be deceived by her appearance. She always does things as she wants. She doesn't think comprehensively. I have mentioned it to her many times, but she doesn't listen. So I don't bother to talk to her. When she hits the wall, she will look back and examine herself. Su Weifeng didn't say much. This should be the different styles of doing things. Lin Zhuangxuan does things according to her own preferences, and she cares more about the process of doing things, not the results. Qiao Yushan has to consider the results first, and then decide whether to do it. Qiao Yushan is a person who does business, while Lin Zhuangxuan is a person who knows how to live. It's no wonder that Lin Zhuangxuan doesn't want to tell Qiao Yushan about her own affairs. As the two chatted, they arrived at the door of their home, and Su Weifeng opened the door directly with the key. Shenji poked his head out of the kitchen with a smug smile on his face, and said, you're back. The food will be ready soon. Let's go to the bedroom and chat for a while. Su Weifeng immediately said, you won't be that fast. Hey, go and take a look. See if you are satisfied. Shenji was even more proud. I'll cook first. Then he went back to the kitchen. Su Weifeng took Qiao Yushan directly to his bedroom. Looking at the newly renovated bedroom, Su Weifeng was simply in tears. Qiao Yushan was also stunned at this time. Looking at everything in the room, her face turned red. The air conditioner was newly replaced, and the bed was also newly replaced. Su Weifeng's bed used to be a 1.5 meter bed, but now it has been directly replaced with a 2 meter wide bed. That would be fine, but what made the two speechless was that there was a big red quilt on the bed, and the pillow was also replaced with a red pillowcase, and the only thing missing was a big wedding character embroidered on the quilt cover. This, my mother is also talking nonsense. Su Weifeng's mouth twitched. Puff. Qiao Yushan actually laughed, then covered her mouth, and sat down on the bed, saying, not bad, very comfortable. Su Weifeng looked at Qiao Yushan in surprise, and said, you feel good. Qiao Yushan's mouth curled up slightly, and said, you can try it, it's really comfortable, and auntie must have spent a lot of thought on it. Su Weifeng didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and said, I feel that this is decorated like a new house. I'm afraid my mother will force you to try it here today. Qiao Yushan's face froze, and said, no way. Su Weifeng just spread his hands. Qiao Yushan's mouth twitched slightly, without Su Weifeng giving an answer. She actually knew the answer, looking at Su Weifeng, and said, what should I do? Su Weifeng said without hesitation, escape. What else can I do? You can really live here. That's right, that's the only way. Qiao Yushan couldn't help shaking her head. This matter was really embarrassing. How is it? How is it? Are you satisfied? Shenji hadn't come in yet, and the voice rang outside. Qiao Yushan and Su Weifeng quickly adjusted their expressions, and Qiao Yushan also stood up. Shenji came in, looked at Qiao Yushan expectantly, and said, Yushan, what do you think of this? I know you young people may not like this color, but I feel that your coming to our house is a big happy event, and it is something worth celebrating anyway, so we still have to have this joyous atmosphere. I bought this bright red color first, and you can change it later, if you like what kind of color you like. Under such a look, how could Qiao Yushan say it was not good, and hurriedly said, Auntie, I think this color is very good, and the bed is also very comfortable. I just sat on it to try it out. Shenji was very happy all of a sudden, and took Qiao Yushan's hand, and said, that's good, that's good. I know you are all busy, so I didn't ask for your opinion. Don't worry, I'm not the kind of person who wants to take care of everything. I just want to save you some trouble. If you have any ideas, just tell me, and I'll do it right away. Qiao Yushan hurriedly said, no, I think this is good enough. Auntie, you don't have to worry about us anymore. You have already worried so much about us, and I can't thank you enough. Shenji was so happy to be coaxed by Qiao Yushan that he nodded repeatedly and said, Yushan is really considerate. Let's go, let's eat first. Auntie made silver carp tofu for you again today, and bought a big fish head specially. It's very fresh. Su Weifeng followed the two of them silently, and shook his head secretly. He felt that Qiao Yushan would have a hard time getting away tonight. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 96. It's not that easy to leave. Sukayango went to study again, so there were still 3 people at home. Shenji picked up some food for Qiao Yushan from time to time. Yushan, you should eat more fish heads, especially fish brains. What you eat will replenish what you have. You use your brain too much every day, so you need to replenish it the most. Thank you, Auntie. Qiao Yushan was really touched and ate up all the fish brains that Shenji brought to her. Shenji was even happier when he saw Qiao Yushan eating so happily. He said, Yushan, you have worked so hard. This money cannot be earned in a day or two. You should take a break. Tonight, don't think about the company or the job. Just chat with Auntie and relax. Qiao Yushan nodded repeatedly and said, yeah, I don't think about that. The meal didn't take long. After the meal, Qiao Yushan helped Shenji clean up the dishes. This time, Shenji didn't stop her, but worked with her. The two chatted while working. Su Weifeng looked at the two of them, and felt that they were really getting along well with each other. After cleaning up, Qiao Yushan sat on the sofa, leaned back, stroked her belly, and said, Auntie, I really ate too much today. If I continue like this, I will really gain weight. You are too thin now. Even if you gain another 20 kilograms, you won't look fat, and that's healthy. For a woman, the thinner she is, the better she looks. She must have some flesh. Besides, if she gets pregnant and has children in the future, she must have a healthy body. Being too thin is not good for the child. Qiao Yushan was suddenly embarrassed. Su Weifeng said quickly, "Mom, are you a little too anxious?" Shenji smiled and said, yes, I know I'm too anxious. I also know that Yushan is busy with her career and has no time to have children. Don't worry, I will never force you. I'm very open-minded. But what if I really get pregnant by accident? Then I still hope to give birth to the child. Of course, this is my idea. If you still don't want it, then I support you. Su Weifeng rolled his eyes and said, Mom, can we change the subject? Shenji laughed and said, yes, let's not talk about this. Shanshan, you should know a lot about cosmetics. My skin feels a little rough recently, and I want to buy some cosmetics. Can you give me some advice? Qiao Yushan was finally not so embarrassed and said, I think Auntie's skin is still very good. What's good about it? How can my skin be as good as you young people? It's all loose. Women are really afraid of getting old. If I don't pay attention, I'm afraid that in a few years, I will really become an old lady. It's not that serious. Auntie's foundation is still very good. I feel that few people of the same age can match Auntie's. I know a cosmetic that should be suitable for Auntie's skin. Okay, tell me. After Shenji finished speaking, he looked at Su Weifeng and said, let's talk about ours, and you, a grown man, should do what you should do. Su Weifeng really had no interest in these things. He quickly stood up and said, you guys chat, I'm going back to my room. When he returned to the room, Sun Yumeng sent him a message. She had some ideas, but she was not sure, so she wanted to ask Su Weifeng for his opinion. Su Weifeng was not professional, so he simply pulled Sun Yumeng and Lin Zhuangxuan into a group, and then the three of them discussed together. Lin Zhuangxuan and Sun Yumeng were the main discussants, and Su Weifeng gave some opinions from time to time, and expressed his own views, which could bring some unexpected surprises. After the discussion, Su Weifeng looked at the time, and found that it was already past 10 o'clock. He stretched his body, took his clothes, and thought about taking a shower, and going to bed. Oh my god, Qiao Yushan is still here. Su Weifeng only noticed at this time that Qiao Yushan and Shenji were still in the living room, watching TV and chatting. Qiao Yushan looked at the clothes Su Weifeng was holding, and was obviously going to take a shower, and was also stunned for a moment. Su Weifeng knew that she had misunderstood, and thought that he also wanted her to live here. Yushan, I'm so sorry. I was so absorbed in my work that I forgot you were here. I was thinking about taking a shower and going to bed. At this time, any explanation is not as good as telling the truth. Shenji glared at me and said, is it okay? How can I forget my girlfriend when she is here? Do you want to be beaten? Yushan, you have to deal with her. I absolutely support you. This guy is a little arrogant. You must stop him from having such thoughts. Qiao Yushan was really uncomfortable at first. Su Weifeng looked like he had joined forces with Shenji to make her stay. However, after hearing Su Weifeng's reason, she could understand it. She was also a workaholic. Once she started working seriously, she would really forget about food and sleep, and forget about everything around her. Auntie, Weifeng is serious about his work. I can understand that. Shenji shook his head and said earnestly, you are pampering him. This man really can't be spoiled. The more you spoil him, the more of a bastard he becomes. Su Weifeng's face turned dark and he said, Mom, are you my biological mother? Shenji glared and said, nonsense, but Yushan is also my biological daughter-in-law. Don't you know? The mother-in-law and daughter-in-law must be of one mind, so that the family can be harmonious, so I will definitely stand on the same line with Yushan. Su Weifeng rolled his eyes and said, okay, but it's getting late. Yushan has to go to work tomorrow. I'll send her home. Go back. Why go back? It's so late. Just stay here. Shenji looked as if it was a matter of course. Su Weifeng coughed lightly and said, Yushan is not used to sleeping outside. What kind of excuse is that? Didn't she live very well at your grandma's house the day before yesterday? Su Weifeng was troubled and said hurriedly, she has to change clothes tomorrow. Just go back and change tomorrow morning. Su Weifeng had to use his last trump card and said, okay, mom, I'll send Yushan back and live at her house. Is that so? I have bought new clothes in this room for you. It's like moving into a new home. You must live here on the first day. If you don't, it's not auspicious. How about you stay here tonight first, and if you don't want to live at home in the future, you can live outside. Su Weifeng was really impressed by his mother. She could actually come up with such an excuse. He grinned and said, then she didn't bring pajamas either. Shenji suddenly turned and went into her bedroom and came out in a flash. Ding ding ding. He raised the bag in his hand with a beaming eyebrow and said, I have bought pajamas for Yushan. Chapter 97 Strike. While the iron is hot. Updated. Su Weifeng and Qiao Yushan both stared at Shenji with their eyes wide open, dumbfounded and dumbfounded. Even though they had seen many storms, they were really at a loss now. Shenji sat next to Qiao Yushan and said with a smile, Yushan, I don't know what material you like, so I just picked a set for you. Try it and see if it fits. Su Weifeng glanced at it and saw the price tag on it. 2,280. Mom was really willing to spend money. She never bought clothes for herself that cost more than 1,000 yuan, but she bought a set of pajamas for Qiao Yushan for more than 2,000 yuan. Qiao Yushan also saw the price and was shocked. Even though she was rich, she felt that the price of a set of pajamas was very expensive. She said, Auntie, you are too good to me. It's okay, it's okay. Auntie just wants to see you, and our Weifeng get along well. Besides, we save money for you. If you keep it in your hands, you can take it into the coffin. Qiao Yushan was moved to tears. If it was a wealthy family, spending this much money to buy a set of pajamas would naturally not be a big deal, but for this ordinary family, it seemed to be quite a luxury. She said softly, thank you, Auntie. Shenji patted the back of Qiao Yushan's hand and said, what are you thanking me for? We are a family. Auntie is like this. She is sincere to her family and is fine with anything. Okay, it's getting late. Go take a shower and rest. I'll watch TV for a while. Su Weifeng thought that his mother had gone back to the room so he could take Qiao Yushan away, but his mother made it clear that she was here to supervise the two of them. If he wanted to leave, he had to get past her. Su Weifeng looked at Qiao Yushan, but Qiao Yushan suddenly smiled and said, then I'll go take a shower first. Ah! Su Weifeng screamed out loud. Shenji glared and said, why are you screaming? Go with Yushan. She's not familiar with our things. Su Weifeng followed Qiao Yushan into the bathroom and whispered, why did you agree? Do I have any reason to refuse? Qiao Yushan's expression was very calm. But, Su Weifeng frowned. I believe you. Qiao Yushan smiled faintly and said, go out. I know how to do it. Su Weifeng and Qiao Yushan looked at each other for a few seconds, then shook his head gently and walked out helplessly. When they got to the living room, Shenji pulled Su Weifeng to his side, grabbed Su Weifeng's ear, glared at him and whispered, you little bastard, are you stupid? Are you stupid? Yes, yes, yes. Su Weifeng begged for mercy. HMPH, do you know how to strike while the iron is hot? Do you know how to take advantage of the situation? Once you break the relationship, you have to keep an eye on her and not give her a chance to breathe. Only then can you catch her. I don't know how I raised such a stupid son like you. Su Weifeng was sweating. What kind of theory is this? He had to say, yes, yes, I know. She stayed. Shenji glared at him and said, that's because your mother is so wise and powerful. If you rely on yourself, you won't make any progress in another year. Okay, my mother is the most wise and powerful, and you are my guiding light. That's more like it. Shenji let Su Weifeng go. After Qiao Yushan finished showering, Su Weifeng went to take a shower again. Smelling the fragrance of shampoo in the bathroom, he couldn't help but imagine the scene of Qiao Yushan taking a shower here in his mind, and he was actually a little distracted. Shaking his head quickly, Su Weifeng quickly threw these messy thoughts behind him. This kind of thought can't be allowed to develop. It's really easy to make mistakes. After taking a shower, his mother and Qiao Yushan were still in the living room. As soon as he came out, Shenji stood up and said, "Okay, you guys go and rest. I also need to take a shower and go to bed." Su Weifeng and Qiao Yushan entered the bedroom, and Su Weifeng closed the door at the back. The click sound of the door closing made Qiao Yushan, who was walking in front, stiffen slightly. Su Weifeng hesitated for a moment and said, "Well, I'd better lock the door. I'm not sure if my mother will come in early tomorrow morning pretending to get something." Qiao Yushan turned around and said with a helpless smile, "Not really?" Su Weifeng smiled bitterly and said, "Maybe, can't you see that my mother has been very concerned about the two of us? She's just about to stare at us doing something." Qiao Yushan naturally felt it as well, but this time she chuckled and said, "I think my aunt is very interesting. Forget it, it's been a headache for me all day." The two were silent for a while, and Qiao Yushan said, "Let's go to bed. I do have a lot of things to do tomorrow." Su Weifeng agreed and said, "Okay." The two got on the bed from both sides, and Su Weifeng turned off the lights by the bed and said, "Go to sleep." "Yeah." Qiao Yushan responded, and then there was no movement from the two. After more than 10 minutes, Su Weifeng could still feel that Qiao Yushan's breathing was not steady. She was obviously still very nervous, so he said, "Don't worry, I can still guarantee this. I will never touch you." Qiao Yushan said, "I believe you on this, but it is indeed the first time for me to sleep in the same bed with a man. I always feel a little awkward." "You slept in the same bed with Zhuangzi that day? You didn't just fall asleep while lying there, did you?" She asked me to tell a story, and I told her one. I was so tired that I fell asleep. I don't know when she fell asleep. Qiao Yushan chuckled and said, "You are really good. There is a beautiful woman sleeping in the same bed with you, and you can fall asleep first." Su Weifeng also smiled and said, "I have a very good advantage. That is, I never fantasize about something. If I know it is not possible, I will never fantasize about it again. I will not torture myself. I will fall asleep naturally when I'm sleepy." Your mentality is really not easy. I just make myself live a little easier. Su Weifeng yawned and said, "Go to sleep. You have to go to work tomorrow." "Okay." After chatting for a while, Qiao Yushan really relaxed a little. After a while, Su Weifeng's low nose sound made Qiao Yushan realize how strong Su Weifeng's sleepiness was. He could really fall asleep first. But she was completely relieved. She fell asleep quickly. When Qiao Yushan woke up the next morning, Su Weifeng was no longer in bed. He turned over and looked at the time. It was already 7:30. Qiao Yushan sat up quickly. Chapter 98 Scum. "You're up. I was going to come in and call you to get up for dinner." Su Weifeng pushed the door open and walked in. "Oh, okay." Qiao Yushan replied casually, got off the bed and yawned again, then suddenly realized a problem, covered her face, and said, "You go out first." Su Weifeng chuckled and said, "Even if you're not wearing makeup, you're still beautiful." "That won't work. Get out quickly." After driving Su Weifeng out, Qiao Yushan stood there in a daze for about 20 seconds. When Su Weifeng came in just now, she didn't take it seriously at all, as if it was a matter of course. In just one night, she actually got used to Su Weifeng and her being in the same room. It takes 100 years to get on the same boat, and 1,000 years to sleep on the same pillow. Although the two of them were sleeping on the same bed, it was fake, but it would make people get used to it all of a sudden. The magic of sleeping on the same bed is really great. After washing up in pajamas and then having a sweet breakfast, Qiao Yushan changed into her own clothes. "Yushan, come back for dinner tonight?" Qiao Yushan asked before leaving. This time, Qiao Yushan took the initiative to say, "Auntie, I will be very busy these 2 days, and I will come over in 2 days." Su Weifeng also said, "I will also go on a business trip tomorrow, so don't worry about us these 2 days." Shenji said, okay, you guys, I worry about you, because you are too busy one day. If you are not busy, you can live in your world of two, and I don't care about you." The two of them walked out of the gate of the community together, and Qiao Yushan asked, "Do you need me to take you there?" Su Weifeng said, "We are going in 2 different directions. I can take a car by myself." "Oh, okay, I'll leave first." Qiao Yushan waved to Su Weifeng and hurriedly took a car and left. Su Weifeng watched Qiao Yushan leave, and then he also took a taxi. He felt a little funny in his heart. The two of them pretended to be a couple, but they were just in name only. Now they not only have to do some things like meeting parents, but they have even reached the point of living together. Although they just shared a bed and nothing else, in the eyes of their parents, this must have happened. On Wednesday noon, Su Weifeng and Lin Zhuangxuan took the high-speed train to the provincial capital. The two did not buy any business class seats, but ordinary second-class seats in carriage 8. After checking their tickets, the two lined up to wait for boarding. When the carriage door opened, everyone lined up normally to board the train. When Su Weifeng and Lin Zhuangxuan were about to board the train, two people suddenly squeezed in from the side, squeezing Lin Zhuangxuan and making him stagger. "Don't you know how to line up?" Lin Zhuangxuan stood firm and immediately frowned and said. The two people, a man and a woman, were dressed very elegantly and looked rich. The woman snorted and said, "We are business class." Then she walked into the carriage. Lin Zhuangxuan said unhappily, "What's so great about the business class? Can we ignore the rules?" The woman turned around and said arrogantly, "You are right. Not everyone can afford to sit in the business class. If I can afford to sit in the business class, it means I have money, and if I have money, I can do whatever I want." After that, she went straight into the business class. Lin Zhuangxuan said angrily, "Who is this person? He is just rubbish." Su Weifeng said lightly, "Don't bother with such people. No, don't bother with such dogs." Puff. Lin Zhuangxuan laughed out loud. Unexpectedly, the two men rushed out directly from the business class. The man looked at Su Weifeng with a cold look and said, "Do you have the guts to say it again?" "Oh, your dog's ears are pretty good." Su Weifeng responded with a smile. "Asshole." The man cursed and raised his hand to slap Su Weifeng in the face. However, before his hand hit Su Weifeng's face, Su Weifeng had already raised his hand to grab his wrist and then directly increased his strength. "Ah. It hurts." The guy screamed in pain and tried to break free, but he felt like his hand was clamped by a pair of pliers and couldn't get it free at all. In addition, his wrist was getting more and more painful. The attendant at the door reacted at this time and hurried over to say, "No fighting, otherwise I will ask the police to deal with it." Su Weifeng didn't let go, looked at the guy coldly, and said, "Apologize." The guy's face was sweating from the pain, and he stammered, I'm sorry. Humph." Su Weifeng snorted coldly and let him go. The guy quickly withdrew his hand and saw that there was already a circle of red marks on his wrist. There were even clear fingerprints on the red marks, which showed how strong the other party's hand was. "Boy, this matter is not over yet. You wait." No longer being restrained, the guy's face suddenly showed a ferocious look, glaring at Su Weifeng with gritted teeth. Su Weifeng said lightly, "You'd better not mess with me again." Then he pulled Lin Zhuangxuan into the carriage. Su Weifeng and Lin Zhuangxuan's seats were on the side with two seats. Lin Zhuangxuan sat inside, and Su Weifeng put their bags on the luggage rack and sat outside. Lin Zhuangxuan was still angry and said, "Humph, those two were really scumbags just now. You should have beaten them up just now." Su Weifeng chuckled and said, "If we argue with such scumbags, it will make us look as uncultured as them." Lin Zhuangxuan said, "That's true. If a dog bites us, we can't bite them back." Su Weifeng blinked and said, "You are wrong. If a dog bites us, we can't bite back, but we can beat them to death directly." Lin Zhuangxuan was stunned for a moment, then chuckled and said, "You are still cruel, but I like it." After a few words, the two of them didn't take it to heart. Lin Zhuangxuan took out the IPD and started playing a short video. She gave Su Weifeng an earphone to wear in his ear, shoulder to shoulder, so that the earphone would not be torn apart. Lin Zhuangxuan and Su Weifeng have long been accustomed to such physical contact. Now, watching short videos is no longer entertainment for the two of them, but a kind of work. They need to analyze what themes are popular and what themes are popular with the audience, and find out the flaws and advantages in other works. It is not lonely this way, and more than half an hour passed quickly. "Dear passengers, there is a patient in the business class of carriage 8 who has a sudden illness and urgently needs the help of a doctor. If there is a doctor, please come to carriage 8. The broadcast suddenly sounded in the car. After ringing for many times in a row, Su Weifeng stood up. Rescue? What are you going to do? Lin Zhuangxuan asked doubtfully. I'm going to take a look. Su Weifeng answered. Lin Zhuangxuan also stood up and said, yes, we should indeed take a look. Doctors are rescuing patients. This is also worth watching live. The two came to the door of the business class, and a flight attendant immediately came up and said, are you two doctors? No. Lin Zhuangxuan said immediately. The flight attendant immediately said, we need doctors. Please don't come over to watch. Su Weifeng said at this time, I'm a doctor. Ah. Lin Zhuangxuan's eyes widened for a moment, but he immediately admired Su Weifeng in his heart. Su Weifeng's reaction was fast enough, otherwise they would not be able to get in. Then please come in. The flight attendant quickly led Su Weifeng and Lin Zhuangxuan in. There were a total of 6 seats in the business class, and there were a total of 4 people in it, including the young man and woman just now. The two guys stood aside at this time, and both of them showed a look of disgust on their faces. The other was a white-haired old man, lying on the chair at this time. His face was pale and his lips were blue. Next to him, a girl in her early 20s, with tears in her eyes, was running around anxiously, but it was still difficult to hide her beautiful face. The doctor is here. The flight attendant brought Su Weifeng over. He's a doctor? The scumbag girl shouted with her eyes wide open. Lin Zhuangxuan glared and said, what does it have to do with you? Human life is at stake. You'd better shut your stinky mouths. Doctor, please save my grandfather. The beautiful girl rushed forward and grabbed Su Weifeng's arm tightly. Su Weifeng said, the patient should have a history of heart disease, right? The girl said tearfully, yes, my grandfather has a heart disease. I just gave him a quick-acting heart-saving pill, but it didn't work. Okay, let me take a look first. Su Weifeng came to the old man's side, first looked at the old man's eyelids, and then put his fingers on his wrist. The scumbag suddenly laughed and said in a sarcasm, pulse diagnosis, Chinese medicine, this is really funny, this is an emergency, can Chinese medicine save people? You should find a place to show off, don't delay the patient's condition any longer. Lin Zhuangxuan thought Su Weifeng just wanted to sneak in to check the situation, but who knew that Su Weifeng actually went to check the patient's condition, as if he really wanted to save him. She was shocked. Su Weifeng never said that he was a doctor before. This is nonsense. So when the scumbag mocked her, she didn't dare to refute. The beautiful girl was also a little at a loss after hearing this. Su Weifeng ignored him and said calmly, it's not a big problem. The scumbag girl curled her lips and said, you are so arrogant. I don't know where this liar came from. I advise you not to let him treat the disease, otherwise he will die, and you will have no place to cry. Su Weifeng turned his head and looked at the two coldly, saying, can you two treat diseases? If not, you'd better shut up and get out. The scumbag girl chuckled and said, you are still pretending. You can pretend. If you kill someone, you will be in trouble. Shut up. Get out. The beautiful girl suddenly became furious. The flight attendant also hurriedly said, please go out first. Don't delay the doctor from treating people. Regardless of whether they believe in Su Weifeng, a Chinese medicine doctor, or not, Su Weifeng is the only doctor who came now, so for the patients, this is the only chance. The two of them are still sneering here, which makes them annoyed. The two guys walked out angrily. At the door, the scumbag girl pouted and said, you are so stupid. You still believe that guy. Just wait to see your grandfather off. Shut up. The beautiful girl, Lin Zhuangxuan and the flight attendant roared almost in unison, with murderous eyes. Su Weifeng ignored these things. At this time, he pressed one hand on the old man's heart, and moved his other hand back and forth on the old man's chest. The other people in the car were all looking at the patient nervously. They didn't understand Su Weifeng's treatment methods at all. Now they could only pray in their hearts. Lin Zhuangxuan's heart was also in turmoil. Not only was she concerned about the old man's condition, but she was also worried that Su Weifeng could not cure him. If the old man died, Su Weifeng would probably have to bear some responsibility. The atmosphere in the car was indescribably tense, but Su Weifeng's face was always quite calm, and his hands were always moving. It seemed like only a few minutes, or a few hours. The old man's lips moved a few times, and then he let out a long breath. Grandpa. The old man's granddaughter shouted in surprise. Don't make a fuss, it will take a while. Su Weifeng said lightly. The girl quickly covered her mouth, but her face was already filled with a strong ecstasy. Lin Zhuangxuan also breathed a long sigh of relief. She was really scared to death just now. After a while, the old man's breathing slowly stabilized, and then he opened his eyes. Su Weifeng then let go of his hand and said, okay, go back to the hospital for another checkup. It shouldn't be a big problem in a short time. Grandpa, how are you? The old man's granddaughter rushed to the old man's side, grabbed the old man's hand, and burst into tears. I'm suffocating to death. The old man let out a long breath again. I'm glad you're okay. I'm glad you're okay. You really scared me to death. The girl couldn't hold back her tears any longer, and they flowed out like a flood from a dam. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. The king of hell hasn't thought of taking me away yet. I'm fine. The old man stroked his granddaughter's face and smiled. The flight attendant came over and said, old man, the train will arrive soon. We have already contacted the ambulance. The girl hurriedly packed her things, but suddenly remembered that the doctor who saved the patient didn't even say a word of thanks. She turned around and found that Su Weifeng had disappeared. Where is that doctor? The girl asked hurriedly. I didn't notice when he left. This doctor's medical skills are really great. This is the first time I know that Chinese medicine can save people like this. He didn't even leave his name. He just left after saving the patient. This medical ethics is also quite noble. While speaking, the flight attendant glanced at the two scumbags at the door. This comparison made him feel how scumbag these two people were. He saved my grandfather's life, and I haven't thanked him properly yet. Then I'll go find him for you. However, the train will arrive in 2 minutes, so I may not be in time. Well, then please make sure to find that doctor. This is my business card. Call me when the time comes. The girl handed a business card to the attendant. Chapter 100. You know everything. Oh my god, Weifeng, you are so handsome. Do you know that I thought you were just there to watch the fun and thought you were quick to react. When you went to treat patients, I was stunned, and then my legs went limp. I was thinking, how could you really treat patients? Who knew you could actually treat patients? After Su Weifeng and Lin Zhuangxuan left, they walked to the 6th carriage to get off the train to avoid trouble. After getting off the train, Lin Zhuangxuan took Su Weifeng's arm and chatted excitedly. Su Weifeng said with a smile, that's right, I know a lot. Lin Zhuangxuan hugged Su Weifeng's arm directly, shook it hard twice, and said excitedly, really? What else can you do? What else is amazing? Tell me. Su Weifeng was just joking, but he didn't expect Lin Zhuangxuan to react so much, especially hugging so tightly. This contact. It was so wonderful that it was indescribable, and it made his blood flow faster. She coughed lightly and whispered, Zhuangxuan, stop making trouble. There are so many people here. I'm not making trouble. Ah. Lin Zhuangxuan suddenly realized her actions, let go of Su Weifeng's hand, and moved to the side, knocking the middle-aged uncle next to her, and making him stagger. Young man, don't make trouble when walking. The uncle frowned. Seeing such a beautiful girl like Lin Zhuangxuan, he didn't get angry, but still reminded her. Sorry. Lin Zhuangxuan apologized quickly, then took Su Weifeng's arm again, stuck out her tongue, pinched Su Weifeng's arm gently, and said, it's all your fault. You made me look bad. Su Weifeng said helplessly, this is also my fault. If not you, who should I blame? Humph. Lin Zhuangxuan pinched Su Weifeng again, but she didn't dare to make trouble again. In public, she still had to maintain her image. Su Weifeng's performance just now was really shocking. They took a taxi and went to the hotel. The hotel was the address of the event and was also arranged by the organizer. When the two arrived at the lobby, Lin Zhuangxuan poked Su Weifeng and said, those two annoying guys are here too. Su Weifeng also saw the scumbag couple he met in the car and said lightly, don't pay attention to them. I'm too lazy to pay attention to them. Lin Zhuangxuan curled her lips in disdain. The two went to check in. Their room was on the 22nd floor. The room was 2 double bedrooms next to each other. After a simple rest in the room, Lin Zhuangxuan came over. I'm done packing. Su Weifeng let her in. Lin Zhuangxuan sat directly on the bed and said, what's there to pack? Just throw your bag away. I'm bored alone, so I have to find you to accompany me. The bed is not bad, quite soft. Su Weifeng chuckled and said, isn't the bed in your room the same? Lin Zhuangxuan winked mischievously and said, mine is mine. Sitting on your bed, I feel like I'm taking advantage. The two chatted and laughed for a while, and Lin Zhuangxuan said, you are actually a doctor. Haven't you been in the army? Being a soldier is being a soldier, but when we are on missions outside, we don't have professional medical soldiers following us. Everyone has to deal with injuries by themselves, so basically some problems can be solved by themselves. Oh my god, this special forces soldier has to be so versatile. Lin Zhuangxuan grinned and said, I thought it was just strong combat effectiveness, like driving a car, or flying a plane. In order to survive, you have to know everything. Sometimes when we go on missions, we may be in the primeval forest for several months. We may encounter all kinds of situations. If we don't have enough coping methods, we would have died countless times. Lin Zhuangxuan showed a distressed look in his eyes and said, that's really not easy. Can you tell me about what happened in the primeval forest? I used to like watching those kinds of survival movies in the wild. That's fine, but we are going to attend an event soon. Then I'll tell you, when we come back tonight. Lin Zhuangxuan smiled proudly and said, you're not allowed to deny it when the time comes. Seeing that the time was almost up, Su Weifeng and Lin Zhuangxuan came to a banquet hall on the 5th floor. Tonight's event was a cocktail party. A cocktail party was the most convenient way to socialize. Everyone held a glass of wine, chatted with one person for a while, and then chatted with another person for a while. They could also listen to others chatting and get some useful information from it to find a suitable business partner. When the two arrived here, there were already quite a few people inside, and everyone gathered in groups of 3 or 5 to chat. Lin Zhuangxuan took Su Weifeng's arm and said nervously, this is my first time attending such a cocktail party. I'm really a little nervous. You're not nervous at all. Have you attended one before? Yes. Su Weifeng nodded. He had attended many cocktail parties before, of all sizes, even cocktail parties organized by the royal family. When he attended cocktail parties, his identity was different. A cocktail party like this can only be said to be the most ordinary. Lin Zhuangxuan said with admiration, why do I feel like there is nothing you don't know? Su Weifeng smiled slightly and said, just treat this kind of cocktail party as a class reunion or something. Lin Zhuangxuan nodded and whispered, I'll follow you all the time, in case I don't understand, and do something embarrassing again. It will be embarrassing. Su Weifeng and Lin Zhuangxuan were newcomers, and no one here knew them, so after taking a look at them, everyone did what they had to do, and no one came to talk to them. No one cares about us, what should we do? Lin Zhuangxuan asked. Su Weifeng smiled and said, let's go eat first, and then take the initiative to find someone to talk to. This opportunity is also found by ourselves. The food is self-service. Lin Zhuangxuan looked at Su Weifeng and made a big plate and said, will this make people think that we are here to eat and drink for free? Su Weifeng smiled and said, a successful businessman will not look down on you because of how much you eat. Moreover, the more casual you are here, the more it can be said that you are not afraid of the stage, and the more you participate in such occasions, some old timers will come to talk to us. No way. Lin Zhuangxuan was a little skeptical, and as a girl, she was embarrassed to make a plate of food, so she just picked something at random. They found a table and sat down to eat. Seeing Su Weifeng wolfing down his food, Lin Zhuangxuan did not feel a sense of disobedience. Instead, she felt that Su Weifeng was quite graceful when eating. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.